before Zeus hurled his first thunderbolt, before Poseidon commanded the seas, and before Hades claimed dominion over the dead, 3 sisters already sat at their eternal loom, weaving the threads that would bind gods and mortals alike. The Moirai, known to later generations as the Fates, emerged from the primordial darkness not as subjects of divine will, but as its very architects. Their origins stretch back to the earliest moments of cosmic formation, when the universe itself was taking its first tentative breaths, and the fundamental laws of existence were crystallizing from chaos. The birth of these 3 sisters represents one of the most fascinating paradoxes in ancient cosmogony. Unlike the Olympian deities who would later claim supremacy over mortal affairs, the Moirai existed as manifestations of cosmic principle rather than personalities shaped by human understanding. They were not born in the conventional sense that mortals comprehend birth, emerging from a mother's womb after months of gestation, but rather materialized as necessity demanded their presence. The universe required arbiters of destiny, and so destiny created its own guardians. Ancient sources present conflicting accounts of their precise genealogy, each version reflecting different theological perspectives that evolved across centuries of Greek religious thought. The earliest traditions, preserved in fragments of archaic poetry and referenced by later mythographers, describe the Moirai as daughters of Nyx, the primordial goddess of night. This parentage places them among the most ancient divine beings, born from darkness itself when the cosmos was still finding its form. Nyx, that terrible and beautiful goddess whom even Zeus learned to respect and fear, brought forth these 3 daughters through parthenogenesis, virgin birth that required no male counterpart. This version of their origin emphasizes their fundamental independence from the patriarchal structure that would later dominate Olympian theology. As children of night alone, they existed beyond the reach of Zeus's authority, predating his rise to power by eons. Their mother Nyx commanded such respect that when Hypnos, the god of sleep, fled Zeus's wrath by seeking refuge in her realm, the king of gods dared not pursue him there. The daughters inherited this inviolable status, becoming forces that even the mightiest Olympians could not challenge or override. However, classical sources, particularly those influenced by the systematization of mythology during the 5th and 4th centuries BC, present an alternative genealogy that reflects the evolving religious landscape of ancient Greece. In this tradition, the Moirai are described as daughters of Zeus and Themis, the titaness who personified divine law and proper custom. This parentage serves multiple theological purposes, integrating the fates into the Olympian hierarchy while maintaining their authority over destiny. Themis herself represents an interesting bridge between the primordial and Olympian eras. As one of the Titans, she belonged to the generation of deities that preceded Zeus, yet she sided with the Olympians during the Titanomachy and became Zeus's second consort after Metii. Her domain encompassed not merely law in the human sense, but the fundamental principles that governed proper behaviour among gods and mortals. She understood the natural order that dictated seasonal changes, the obligations of hospitality, the sanctity of oaths, and the proper conduct of assemblies and religious rites. The union of Zeus and Themis that produced the Moirai represents the marriage of supreme power with cosmic law. Zeus brought his authority as king of gods, while Themis contributed her understanding of divine justice and natural order. Their daughters inherited both aspects, the power to enforce their decisions and the wisdom to understand what those decisions should be. This genealogy suggests that fate operates not as arbitrary force, but as the implementation of cosmic justice through divine authority. Yet even this version maintains the essential independence of the Moirai. Though born from Zeus, they were not subject to his whims or commands. Their mother Themis had instilled in them an understanding of law that transcended personal preference or political expediency. They served the cosmic order itself, not any individual deity, regardless of that deity's power or position in the divine hierarchy. The relationship between the Moirai and Ananke, the personification of necessity, reveals another crucial aspect of their cosmic function. Ananke represents the inexorable force that compels events to unfold according to predetermined patterns. She's not fate itself, but rather the mechanism by which fate operates, the cosmic principle that ensures what must happen will happen, regardless of opposition or intervention. Ancient philosophers and theologians understood Ananke as operating on a level that superseded divine authority. Even Zeus, for all his power, could not violate the dictates of necessity. When the Trojan War raged and gods chose sides, supporting their favoured heroes and cities, they still operated within constraints established by Ananke. Paris had to choose among the three goddesses. Helen had to accompany him to Troy, and the war had to run its destined course. Individual battles might be influenced by divine intervention, but the overall pattern remained fixed by necessity's iron grip. The Moirai served as Ananke's agents in the world, translating abstract necessity into specific destinies for individual beings. Where Ananke represented the cosmic principle that all things must follow predetermined patterns, the three sisters provided the mechanism by which those patterns manifested in particular lives. They wove the threads that connected abstract necessity to concrete reality, ensuring that cosmic law operated through individual destinies rather than remaining merely theoretical principle. This relationship explains why the Moirai possessed authority that even Zeus respected. They were not acting according to personal preference or arbitrary decision, but implementing the fundamental structure of reality itself. To challenge their decisions would be to challenge the cosmic order that made existence possible. Even the king of gods understood that such a challenge would ultimately prove futile and potentially catastrophic. The triple nature of the Moirai reflects the ancient Greek understanding of time's passage and fate's operation through temporal progression. Unlike modern conceptions that treat time as uniform flow, ancient thought recognized distinct phases in temporal experience, each requiring different approaches and understanding. The three sisters embodied these phases, dividing the work of destiny according to time's natural divisions. This tripartite structure appears throughout ancient religious and philosophical thought, reflecting deep-seated beliefs about the nature of existence itself. Past, present and future were not merely chronological categories, but represented different modes of being, each with its own characteristics and requirements. The past was fixed and unchangeable, the present was the moment of action and decision, and the future remained open to possibility, while still constrained by what had come before. The Moirai's division of labour according to these temporal categories made them uniquely effective as administrators of destiny. By specialising in different aspects of fate's operation, they could address the full complexity of how individual destinies unfold through time. Their cooperation ensured that past actions had consequences, present choices mattered, and future possibilities remained connected to previous events. Their eternal nature set them apart from both mortals and most other deities. While gods might be immortal, they still experienced change, growth, and development through their interactions with the world. The Moirai existed in a state of perpetual present, simultaneously aware of all moments in time without being confined to any particular temporal perspective. They saw the beginning and end of every story simultaneously, understanding how each thread in their loom connected to every other thread in patterns too complex for other minds to grasp. This temporal transcendence granted them unique authority in cosmic affairs. Other gods might possess great power within their domains, but they remained subject to the limitations of their perspectives and the constraints of their particular moments in time. The Moirai operated from a vantage point that encompassed all of time simultaneously, making their decisions based on complete knowledge rather than partial understanding. Their cosmic authority extended beyond individual destinies to encompass the fundamental structure of reality itself. They determined not only what would happen to particular beings, but also the basic laws that governed how events unfolded, the cycles of birth and death, the patterns of rise and fall, the rhythms of conflict and resolution. All these operated according to principles established by the three sisters at their eternal loom. The cosmic architecture established by the Moirai found its most profound expression through the distinct roles assumed by each sister, their individual specializations creating a seamless system of destiny administration that operated with mechanical precision yet divine wisdom. These three figures, working in perfect synchronization at their eternal station, embodied different aspects of temporal authority while maintaining absolute unity in their cosmic purpose. Their names alone carried weight that resonated through every level of existence, from the humblest mortal dwelling to the marble halls of Olympus. Clotho, whose name derives from the ancient Greek word meaning to spin, occupied the position of ultimate beginning in the cosmic order. Her domain encompassed the moment when potential transformed into actuality, when the abstract possibility of existence crystallized into specific individual life. Unlike mortal spinners who worked with wool or flax, Clotho manipulated the fundamental substance of existence itself, drawing forth threads of destiny from the raw material of cosmic possibility. Her spindle, crafted from materials that predated the formation of the physical universe, hummed with power that resonated through dimensions beyond mortal comprehension. The youngest of the three sisters possessed an ethereal beauty that reflected her connection to life's beginning. Her fingers, eternally youthful and nimble, moved with practiced precision as they guided the nascent threads of destiny onto her spindle. Ancient sources describe her as having eyes that sparkled with the same light present at the moment of cosmic creation, capable of perceiving the infinite potential contained within each new thread she began. Her hair, often depicted as golden or silver depending on the artistic tradition, flowed around her shoulders like captured starlight, never impeding her work yet adding to her otherworldly appearance. Clotho's primary responsibility involved determining the precise moment when each mortal soul would enter physical existence. This decision required far more complexity than simple chronological timing. She had to consider the cosmic conditions present at each potential moment of birth, the alignment of celestial bodies, the state of earthly affairs, and the intricate web of relationships that would surround the new life. Each birth occurred at the exact moment when all these factors aligned to create the optimal conditions for that particular destiny to unfold. Her selection process operated according to principles that transcended mortal understanding of causation. She did not simply respond to biological processes or parental desires, though these factors played roles in her calculations. Instead, she worked from a cosmic perspective that took into account the needs of the universal order itself. Some souls required birth during times of peace to fulfill destinies involving artistic creation or philosophical contemplation. Others needed to enter the world during periods of conflict to serve as warriors or leaders who would shape historical events. The initial circumstances surrounding each birth fell under Clotho's direct authority. She determined whether a child would be born into wealth or poverty, to loving parents or neglectful ones, in times of abundance or scarcity. These decisions were not made arbitrarily or with malicious intent, but according to the requirements of each individual destiny. A soul destined to develop compassion through overcoming hardship would be born into challenging circumstances, while one meant to serve as a patron of arts might enter a household where beauty and culture flourished. Her spindle served as more than a simple tool. It functioned as a cosmic instrument capable of translating divine will into material reality. The device itself defied physical description, appearing different to each observer yet maintaining consistent function across all perceptions. Some ancient accounts describe it as being forged from crystallized time, others as carved from the heartwood of the cosmic tree that supported all existence. Its surface bore inscriptions in languages that predated human speech. symbols that conveyed meaning directly to divine consciousness without requiring conventional interpretation. The threads that emerged from Clotho's spindle possessed qualities that reflected their cosmic origin. Each strand contained within its structure the complete potential of the life it represented, though this potential remained largely dormant until activated by subsequent experiences. The thickness of individual threads varied according to the strength and duration of the destinies they represented. Heroes and kings received robust threads capable of withstanding tremendous strain, while more delicate strands served those whose destinies involved subtler but equally important contributions to the cosmic order. Colour variations in the threads provided additional information about the nature of each destiny. Golden threads typically indicated lives that would achieve great renown or contribute significantly to human advancement. Silver strands mark those destined for wisdom or spiritual achievement. Darker colours did not necessarily indicate negative destinies, but rather lives that would involve struggle, sacrifice, or service in challenging circumstances. The interplay of multiple colours within single threads revealed the complexity of individual destinies, showing how various aspects of experience would combine to create complete life patterns. Lachesis, the middle sister whose name means she who allots, assumed responsibility for the most complex aspect of destiny administration. Where Clotho initiated the process and Atropos would eventually conclude it, Lachesis managed the vast middle portion of existence where actual living occurred. Her domain encompassed the measurement and distribution of life experiences, the allocation of fortune and misfortune, and the careful calibration of each destiny's unfolding through time. Her appearance reflected the gravity and complexity of her responsibilities. Ancient artists typically portrayed her as more mature than Clotho, but not yet bearing the austere dignity of Atropos. Her clothing, often described as shifting between different colours and patterns, symbolised the variable nature of mortal fortune under her administration. Her expression combined wisdom with a hint of sadness, reflecting her intimate knowledge of the suffering that accompanied many of the destinies she was required to measure and distribute. The measuring rod that served as Lachesis' primary tool represented one of the most sophisticated instruments in the cosmic arsenal. Unlike simple physical measuring devices, her rod could assess multiple dimensions of existence simultaneously. It measured not only the temporal length of individual lives, but also their depth of experience, their breadth of influence, and their height of achievement. The rod's surface bore markings that corresponded to different types of life experiences, allowing Lachesis to allocate specific quantities of joy, sorrow, triumph, and defeat to each destiny according to cosmic requirements. Her allocation process required constant attention to the intricate balance that maintained cosmic harmony. Too much fortune concentrated in particular lives could disrupt the natural order, while excessive misfortune might prevent destinies from achieving their intended purposes. Lachesis had to distribute experiences in patterns that served both individual development and universal needs. A soul requiring humility might receive early success followed by significant setbacks, while one destined for leadership might experience graduated challenges that built necessary strength and wisdom. The measurement of life's length fell under Lachesis' particular expertise. She determined not only how many years each mortal would live, but also how those years would be distributed across different phases of existence. Some destinies required long childhoods to develop specific capabilities, while others needed extended periods of maturity to accomplish their cosmic purposes. Her measurements took into account the varying rates at which different souls developed, ensuring that each received exactly the amount of time necessary for their destinies to reach completion. Fortune and misfortune flowed from Lachesis' hands according to patterns that served purposes beyond immediate comprehension. What appeared as random distribution to mortal observers actually followed sophisticated algorithms that balanced individual needs with cosmic requirements. She might grant wealth to someone destined to become a great patron of learning, while imposing poverty on another soul that needed to develop spiritual strength through material deprivation. Her distributions always served the ultimate good of both individual destinies and universal order, though the connections between immediate circumstances and long-term purposes often remained hidden from a mortal understanding. Atropos, the eldest and most formidable of the three sisters, bore the awesome responsibility of bringing each destiny to its appointed conclusion. Her name, meaning she who cannot be turned or the inevitable one, perfectly captured her role as the final arbiter of mortal existence. No power in the universe, whether divine or mortal, could alter her decisions once made. Even Zeus himself acknowledged her absolute authority in matters of death, understanding that to challenge Atropos would be to challenge the fundamental structure of existence itself. Her appearance reflected the terrible finality of her function. Ancient sources consistently describe her as the largest and most imposing of the three sisters, with features that combined divine beauty with inexorable authority. Her eyes, often depicted as dark and penetrating, seemed to look directly into the essential nature of things, seeing past all superficial appearances to the underlying reality of each destiny's completion. Her hair, typically shown as white or silver, represented the wisdom that came from witnessing the end of countless lives across the ages. The shears that served as Atropos's instrument of authority possessed capabilities that transcended physical cutting. These cosmic scissors could sever not merely the material threads spun by her sisters, but the very connections that bound souls to physical existence. The blades themselves were forged from materials that existed outside normal space and time, making them capable of cutting through any substance, whether physical or metaphysical. Their edges never dulled, their precision never wavered, and their function never failed. Her cutting decisions operated according to timing established during the initial spinning and measuring phases, yet Atropos retained discretionary authority in determining the exact moment and manner of each death. She could not extend lives beyond their allotted spans or terminate them before their appointed times, but she could choose whether death came suddenly or gradually, peacefully or violently, alone or surrounded by loved ones. These choices reflected her deep understanding of what each soul required for proper transition from physical to spiritual existence. The moment of death itself involved far more complexity than simple cessation of biological function. Atropos had to ensure that each soul departed at precisely the right instant to maintain cosmic balance, that all necessary experiences had been completed, and that the death would serve its intended purpose in the broader pattern of universal order. Some deaths were meant to inspire others to greatness, while others served to remove obstacles to cosmic progress. Each cutting of the thread sent ripples through the fabric of existence that Atropos had to calculate and control with perfect precision. The tools employed by the three sisters functioned as extensions of their divine authority, each instrument perfectly adapted to its specific cosmic function. Together, the spindle, measuring rod and shears created a complete system for destiny administration that operated with mechanical reliability while maintaining the flexibility necessary to serve the complex requirements of universal order. These implements possessed consciousness of their own, understanding their roles in the cosmic process, and responding to their wielders' intentions with perfect obedience and infinite precision. The cosmic instruments wielded by the three sisters operated according to principles that transcended the simple mechanical functions they appeared to perform. Each tool served as a conduit through which abstract cosmic forces manifested in concrete reality, transforming the theoretical concepts of destiny into the actual experiences that shaped individual lives. The life thread itself represented the most sophisticated metaphysical construct ever devised, functioning simultaneously as literal object and symbolic representation of existence's fundamental nature. The thread spun by Clotho contained within its seemingly simple structure the complete blueprint of each individual destiny, encoded in patterns too complex for mortal comprehension, yet perfectly readable to divine consciousness. Unlike physical threads composed of organic or synthetic materials, these cosmic strands were woven from the essential substance of existence itself, a material that predated matter and energy while containing the potential for both. Each fibre within the thread corresponded to specific aspects of the life it represented: memories, relationships, achievements, failures, moments of joy, periods of suffering, and countless other experiences that would define the individual's journey through existence. The metaphysical properties of these threads allowed them to exist simultaneously in multiple dimensions of reality. On the physical plane, they manifested as the biological and social circumstances that shaped mortal lives. On the spiritual level, they represented the soul's journey toward its ultimate destiny. On the cosmic scale, they served as integral components in the vast tapestry that encompassed all existence. This multi-dimensional nature enabled the threads to influence reality at every level, while maintaining their essential unity and purpose. The spinning process itself required Clotho to access knowledge that encompassed not merely the immediate circumstances of each birth, but the entire cosmic context within which that life would unfold. She had to understand how each new thread would interact with existing strands, how its presence would affect the overall pattern of the tapestry, and how its eventual completion would contribute to the universal design. This required awareness of past events, present conditions, and future possibilities extending far beyond the scope of individual lives. The thickness variations in different threads reflected not merely the duration or intensity of the lives they represented, but their fundamental capacity to influence the cosmic order. Heroes and great leaders received robust threads, capable of withstanding tremendous tension and stress, allowing them to endure the challenges necessary for their destinies, while maintaining sufficient strength to effect significant changes in the world around them. Philosophers and artists often received threads of different composition, perhaps thinner but more flexible, capable of subtle movements that could influence thought and culture across generations. The interweaving process, managed by Lachesis, created connections between individual destinies that form the foundation of all social, political, and cultural development throughout history. No thread existed in isolation. Each strand connected to countless others through relationships, conflicts, collaborations, and influences that shaped the course of human civilization. A thread representing a particular ruler might interweave with strands representing advisors, enemies, subjects, and foreign leaders, creating complex patterns that determine the rise and fall of kingdoms. These interconnections operated according to principles that balanced individual agency with collective necessity. While each person possessed the capacity to make choices within their circumstances, those choices occurred within contexts established by the interweaving of multiple destinies. A merchant's decision to travel a particular trade route might seem like personal choice, but that decision was influenced by economic conditions created by the interwoven destinies of producers, consumers, rulers, and countless others whose threads had been carefully positioned to create those specific circumstances. The grand tapestry created through this interweaving process revealed patterns that extended far beyond human history to encompass the entire cosmic order. The rise and fall of civilizations, the development and decline of cultural movements, the progression of knowledge and understanding, all these followed designs established through the careful positioning of individual threads within the greater weave. What appeared as random historical events actually represented the unfolding of cosmic patterns too vast for mortal comprehension. The relationship between individual threads and the collective tapestry demonstrated how personal destinies served purposes that transcended individual concerns. A thread representing someone destined to die young in battle might seem tragic from a personal perspective, but that sacrifice could serve essential functions in the broader pattern, perhaps inspiring others to greatness, preventing greater catastrophes, or creating conditions necessary for future developments. The three sisters understood these connections in their totality, making decisions based on the requirements of the entire design rather than the preferences of individual participants. The concept of fate's immutability presented one of the most challenging aspects of the Moirai's cosmic function. Once the threads were spun, measured, and positioned within the tapestry, their basic patterns could not be altered without disrupting the entire cosmic order. This created apparent conflicts between predetermined destiny and the experience of making choices that seemed to matter. The resolution of this paradox lay in understanding that fate operated at a different level than individual decision-making. The threads contained within their structure multiple potential pathways that could be activated through personal choices and external circumstances. A thread destined to represent a great leader might achieve that destiny through military conquest, political maneuvering, religious authority, or cultural influence, depending on the choices made by the individual and the circumstances created by interweaving with other threads. The ultimate destination remained fixed, but the specific route taken to reach that destination allowed for considerable variation and personal agency. This system preserved meaningful choice while maintaining cosmic order. Individuals could make decisions that mattered and affected their experiences, but those decisions occurred within boundaries established by their fundamental destinies. A person destined for greatness could choose to pursue that greatness through various means, while someone destined for a quieter life could find fulfillment through different forms of service or achievement. The threads accommodated these variations while ensuring that the overall pattern of the tapestry remained intact. The gods themselves discovered the limits of their power when confronting the immutable nature of fate. Zeus, despite his supreme authority among the Olympians, could not alter the fundamental destinies established by the Moirai. When his beloved mortal son Sarpedon faced death in the Trojan War, Zeus contemplated intervention but ultimately accepted that even his paternal love could not override the cosmic order. Hera reminded him that if he saved Sarpedon, other gods would expect similar interventions for their own favourites, leading to chaos that would undermine the entire system of destiny. This divine restraint demonstrated the wisdom built into the cosmic order. If gods could arbitrarily alter destinies based on personal preferences or emotional attachments, the reliability of fate would collapse, creating uncertainty and chaos throughout the universe. The threads would lose their meaning, the tapestry would unravel, and the fundamental structure that made existence possible would dissolve into randomness. Even Zeus understood that his authority depended on the stability provided by the Moirai's unchanging administration of destiny. The relationship between fate, necessity, and justice created the philosophical foundation that supported the entire cosmic order. Fate, represented by the threads and their predetermined patterns, provided the structure within which all events unfolded. Necessity, embodied by Ananke, supplied the force that ensured those patterns actually manifested in reality. Justice, personified by Dike and supported by her mother Themis, guaranteed that the patterns served purposes worthy of cosmic implementation. These three principles operated in perfect harmony to maintain universal balance. Fate without necessity would remain merely theoretical, lacking the power to influence actual events. Necessity without justice would become tyrannical force, imposing arbitrary patterns without regard for their moral or cosmic value. Justice without fate would lack the consistency needed to provide reliable guidance for behavior and expectation. Together, they created a system that was both powerful enough to govern reality and wise enough to deserve that authority. The administration of this system required the Moirai to maintain perfect balance between competing demands and conflicting needs. They had to ensure that individual destinies fulfilled their cosmic purposes while preserving the freedom necessary for meaningful choice. They had to maintain patterns stable enough to provide reliable structure, while allowing sufficient flexibility to accommodate the complexity of actual existence. They had to serve the needs of the universal order while respecting the dignity and value of individual lives. This balancing act required wisdom that encompassed not merely knowledge of facts and circumstances, but deep understanding of the principles that made existence meaningful and worthwhile. The three sisters possessed this wisdom through their unique perspective that transcended temporal limitations and individual viewpoints. They saw how each thread contributed to the beauty and meaning of the entire tapestry, understanding connections and purposes that remained hidden from more limited perspectives. The cosmic order maintained by the Moirai extended beyond the realm of mortal existence to encompass the behavior and destinies of divine beings as well. Gods might possess immortality and tremendous power, but they remained subject to the fundamental principles that governed all existence. Their threads, while different in composition and duration from mortal strands, still followed patterns established by cosmic necessity and divine justice. The cosmic order maintained by the Moirai created a fundamental paradox that permeated every level of divine existence, establishing a hierarchy where supreme power coexisted with absolute limitation. Zeus, the thunderer who had overthrown his father Kronos and established dominion over gods and mortals alike, found himself occupying a position of unprecedented complexity within this system. His authority extended across the heavens, earth and sea, yet that same authority operated within boundaries established by forces that predated his rise to power. The relationship between Zeus and the three sisters defied simple categorization as either subordination or cooperation. Zeus commanded obedience from every other Olympian deity, his word serving as law throughout the divine realm. Yet, when the Moirai spoke of destiny's requirements, even the king of gods listened with respectful attention. This dynamic reflected not weakness on Zeus's part, but rather his profound understanding of cosmic architecture and his role within it. He had not conquered the universe through brute force alone, but by recognizing and working within the fundamental principles that made stable governance possible. Zeus's enforcement of the Moirai's decrees demonstrated his function as the active agent of cosmic law rather than its ultimate source. When mortals attempted to circumvent their destinies through trickery or divine intervention, Zeus often served as the instrument through which fate reasserted its authority. The king of gods wielded his thunderbolts not merely according to personal whim or political calculation, but in service to the cosmic order that the three sisters maintained through their eternal weaving. This enforcement role required Zeus to act against his own immediate interests and emotional preferences when cosmic necessity demanded such action. His numerous mortal children, born from unions with human women, could not receive special protection from their divine father when their destined times of death arrived. Zeus had to watch Heracles endure his 12 labours, knowing that intervention would disrupt the hero's path toward eventual immortality. He observed Sarpedon's death at Troy without extending the supernatural aid that could have preserved his beloved son's life. The restraint Zeus exercised in these situations revealed the sophisticated understanding of cosmic responsibility that separated him from less mature divine beings. Younger gods might rage against fate's limitations or attempt futile rebellions against predetermined outcomes, but Zeus had learned through experience that such resistance ultimately proved both futile and destructive. His acceptance of the Moirai's authority demonstrated not submission but wisdom, the recognition that his own power derived from and depended upon the stable cosmic order they maintained. The complexity of Zeus's position became most apparent during moments when other gods challenged fate's decrees or sought his support in circumventing predetermined outcomes. Apollo's attempt to save his son Asclepius from death, Demeter's refusal to accept Persephone's abduction, and countless other divine interventions in mortal affairs created situations where Zeus had to balance his role as supreme ruler with his responsibility as fate's enforcer. These conflicts tested his judgment and required decisions that often satisfied no one while serving the greater cosmic good. Zeus's own thread, spun by Clotho in the primordial era before his birth, contained patterns that established his destined role as cosmic administrator rather than arbitrary tyrant. His rise to power had not occurred through random chance or simple strength, but according to designs that served the universe's fundamental needs. The overthrow of Kronos, the division of cosmic domains among his brothers, his establishment of the Olympian order, all these events unfolded according to patterns woven into the cosmic tapestry by the three sisters. The divine rebellions that periodically erupted against fate's authority provided dramatic illustrations of the consequences that followed attempts to circumvent cosmic law. These episodes typically began with individual gods becoming emotionally invested in particular outcomes that conflicted with predetermined destinies, leading them to use their considerable powers in efforts to alter fate's course. The results invariably demonstrated the futility of such resistance while revealing the sophisticated mechanisms through which the cosmic order protected itself from disruption. Apollo's rebellion following Asclepius's death exemplified the pattern that characterized most divine challenges to fate's authority. The god of healing and prophecy had trained his mortal son in medical arts that surpassed anything previously known among humans. Asclepius became so skilled that he could restore life to the dead, performing resurrections that threatened to undermine the natural order of mortality. When Zeus struck down Asclepius with a thunderbolt to preserve the boundary between life and death, Apollo's grief and rage drove him to seek revenge against the Cyclopes who had forged the deadly weapon. Apollo's slaughter of the Cyclopes represented a direct challenge to cosmic order that could not go unanswered. These primordial craftsmen served essential functions in maintaining universal stability, and their deaths disrupted processes far beyond the simple manufacture of thunderbolts. Zeus's response, condemning Apollo to a year of servitude to the mortal king Admetus, demonstrated how fate's protection mechanisms operated through the existing divine hierarchy rather than external intervention. The punishment served multiple purposes within the cosmic system. Apollo experienced firsthand the consequences of challenging predetermined order, learning through direct experience why such resistance proved both futile and destructive. His servitude to a mortal ruler reversed the normal relationship between divine and human authority, teaching humility while demonstrating that even gods remained subject to forces greater than their individual wills. The year of service also provided Apollo with deeper understanding of mortal experience, enhancing his capacity to fulfill his proper divine functions upon his restoration. Demeter's response to Persephone's abduction created an even more dramatic confrontation with fate's authority, one that threatened the survival of all mortal life on Earth. The goddess of agriculture withdrew her blessing from the world when Hades claimed her daughter as queen of the underworld, causing crops to wither and preventing new growth from emerging. Her grief-driven strike against the natural order created conditions that would have led to universal starvation if maintained indefinitely. This rebellion differed from Apollo's in its scope and implications. Where Apollo had acted against specific agents of fate's enforcement, Demeter challenged the cosmic order itself by disrupting the seasonal cycles that supported all terrestrial life. Her actions threatened not merely individual destinies, but the fundamental conditions necessary for mortal existence. The crisis required intervention at the highest levels of cosmic authority, with Zeus himself negotiating the compromise that allowed Persephone to spend part of each year with her mother while fulfilling her obligations as Hades' queen. The resolution of Demeter's rebellion revealed how fate's flexibility operated within predetermined boundaries. Persephone's abduction had been destined from the moment of her birth, woven into the cosmic tapestry as part of the larger pattern that maintained balance between the upper and lower worlds. However, the specific terms of her residence in each realm remained subject to negotiation and adjustment based on circumstances that developed as the predetermined pattern unfolded. Aphrodite's numerous interventions in mortal love affairs demonstrated another form of divine resistance to fate's authority, though her challenges operated through seduction and manipulation rather than direct confrontation. The goddess of love possessed the power to inspire passion that could override rational judgment and social convention, creating situations where mortals acted against their apparent interests and predetermined destinies. Her involvement in the events leading to the Trojan War exemplified how divine interference could complicate fate's implementation without ultimately preventing predetermined outcomes. The judgment of Paris, orchestrated by Aphrodite's promise of Helen's love, created circumstances that led inevitably to the decade-long conflict between Greeks and Trojans. Aphrodite's intervention appeared to alter the course of events, transforming a simple beauty contest among goddesses into the catalyst for history's most famous war. However, closer examination revealed that her actions served fate's purposes rather than opposing them, providing the mechanism through which predetermined patterns could manifest in specific historical events. The goddess's manipulation of Paris's choice demonstrated how divine intervention could serve as fate's instrument rather than its opponent. The war had been destined to occur, woven into the cosmic tapestry as part of the larger pattern that would shape the development of human civilization. Aphrodite's role involved providing the specific catalyst that would trigger the predetermined conflict, ensuring that events unfolded according to cosmic requirements while maintaining the appearance of individual choice and divine preference. The Moirai's function as arbiters in divine disputes reflected their unique position outside the normal hierarchy of Olympian authority. When gods disagreed about proper courses of action or competed for influence over particular outcomes, they could appeal to the three sisters for definitive resolution. These appeals typically occurred when normal diplomatic channels had failed and the disputes threatened to disrupt cosmic order through escalating conflict or divine paralysis. The arbitration process operated according to principles that transcended the personal interests and emotional investments that motivated most divine disputes. The three sisters examined each case from the perspective of cosmic necessity, determining which resolution would best serve the universal order while respecting the legitimate concerns of all parties involved. Their decisions carried absolute authority that no god could challenge or appeal, providing final resolution to conflicts that might otherwise continue indefinitely. The sisters' arbitration of the dispute between Poseidon and Athena over patronage of Athens demonstrated their sophisticated approach to divine conflict resolution. Both deities had legitimate claims to the honour of protecting the great city, and both had offered valuable gifts to its inhabitants. Poseidon had struck the Acropolis with his trident, creating a salt spring that demonstrated his power over the seas. Athena had planted the first olive tree, providing a gift that would sustain the city's inhabitants for generations. The contest between these two powerful deities could have escalated into direct conflict that would have devastated both the city and the surrounding region. Instead, the Moirai determined that the decision should rest with the city's inhabitants themselves, establishing a precedent for mortal participation in divine governance that would influence political development throughout the ancient world. Athena's victory in this contest reflected not favouritism on the part of the three sisters, but their recognition that her gift better served the long-term needs of both the city and the cosmic order. The theological implications of divine omnipotence constrained by predetermined destiny created philosophical challenges that influenced Greek religious and intellectual development for centuries. The apparent contradiction between unlimited divine power and absolute fate's authority required sophisticated theological reasoning that pushed ancient thinkers toward increasingly complex understanding of cosmic organization and divine nature. The resolution of this paradox lay in recognizing that true omnipotence involved the wisdom to exercise power in accordance with cosmic necessity rather than arbitrary personal preference. The gods possessed tremendous capabilities within their domains, but those capabilities operated most effectively when aligned with fate's requirements rather than opposed to them. Divine power that worked against cosmic order ultimately proved self-defeating, while power exercised in harmony with predetermined patterns achieved maximum effectiveness and lasting results. This understanding transformed the concept of divine authority from simple domination to sophisticated cosmic administration. The gods served as agents of universal order rather than its masters, wielding their considerable powers in service to principles that transcended their individual wills and preferences. Their effectiveness as deities depended not on their ability to impose arbitrary decisions, but on their wisdom in recognizing and implementing the requirements of cosmic necessity. The three sisters' authority over both gods and mortals demonstrated the fundamental unity that underlay apparent diversity in cosmic organization. Despite their different natures, capabilities, and roles, all conscious beings remained subject to the same basic principles that governed existence itself. The threads that represented divine destinies might differ in composition and duration from those of mortals, but they followed the same fundamental patterns and served the same cosmic purposes. This cosmic framework that governed divine behavior found its most dramatic expression in the realm of mortal affairs, where the threads spun by the three sisters intersected with human ambition, heroic aspiration, and royal power. Unlike the gods who possessed inherent understanding of their positions within the universal order, mortals encountered fate as an external force that shaped their lives through circumstances they rarely comprehended fully. The greatest heroes and most powerful kings discovered that their exceptional abilities and elevated positions offered no exemption from the patterns woven into the cosmic tapestry, though their prominence often made their struggles against predetermined destiny more spectacular and instructive. The heroic cycles that dominated ancient Greek storytelling revealed the complex relationship between mortal excellence and cosmic necessity. These narratives demonstrated how individuals blessed with extraordinary capabilities, whether physical strength, intellectual brilliance, or divine parentage, still operated within boundaries established by the Moirai's eternal weaving. The hero's attempts to transcend normal human limitations provided dramatic illustrations of both the possibilities and constraints that defined mortal existence within the cosmic order. Achilles, the swift-footed son of Peleus, and the sea nymph Thetis embodied the quintessential heroic confrontation with fate's immutable authority. His story began before his birth, when the three sisters wove into his thread a choice that would define not only his individual destiny but the very nature of heroic excellence itself. The prophecy surrounding his life presented two distinct paths. He could live a long, peaceful existence in obscurity, dying in old age surrounded by children and grandchildren, or he could achieve eternal glory through a brief but magnificent career that would end in death at Troy. This binary choice represented more than simple alternatives between safety and risk. The Moirai had embedded within Achilles' destiny a fundamental question about the nature of meaningful existence and the price of lasting achievement. His thread contained the potential for both outcomes, but activation of one path necessarily precluded the other. The choice itself became the mechanism through which his predetermined destiny manifested, creating the illusion of personal agency while ensuring that cosmic requirements were ultimately fulfilled. The circumstances surrounding this choice demonstrated the sophisticated methods through which fate operated in mortal affairs. Achilles did not receive direct divine revelation about his options, nor did oracles explicitly outline the alternatives available to him. Instead, the choice emerged naturally from the events that unfolded around him as he matured into adulthood, his exceptional martial abilities, his divine heritage, and the political circumstances that led to the Trojan War created conditions where the fundamental decision about his life's direction became unavoidable. His mother Thetis, possessing prophetic knowledge of her son's destiny, attempted various interventions designed to preserve his life while maintaining his heroic potential. Her effort to hide him among the daughters of Lycomedes on Syros represented a desperate attempt to circumvent the choice entirely by preventing his participation in the war that would trigger his predetermined fate. However, this maternal protection ultimately proved futile because it operated against the cosmic patterns established by the three sisters rather than working within them. The discovery of Achilles' disguise by Odysseus demonstrated how fate's mechanisms adapted to overcome obstacles placed in their path. The clever king of Ithaca employed psychological manipulation rather than force, presenting weapons alongside feminine ornaments to the supposed maidens of Syros. Achilles' instinctive response to the martial implements revealed his true nature and made his participation in the war inevitable. This incident illustrated how predetermined destinies possessed inherent momentum that guided events toward their required conclusions despite temporary diversions or delays. Achilles' eventual choice of glory over longevity reflected not merely personal preference, but the operation of cosmic necessity through individual psychology. His nature, shaped by the threads woven at his birth, made the decision to pursue eternal fame virtually inevitable once the proper circumstances arose. The choice felt authentic and meaningful to him because it aligned with his fundamental character, yet that character itself had been established through the Moirai's initial spinning of his destiny thread. The wrath of Achilles that drove the central action of the Trojan War demonstrated how individual psychology served as fate's instrument in bringing about predetermined outcomes. His rage at Agamemnon's appropriation of Perseus created the conditions necessary for Patroclus' death, which in turn motivated Achilles' return to battle and his eventual confrontation with Hector. Each emotional response felt natural and justified to the participants. Yet the sequence of events followed patterns established long before any of the individuals involved had been born. His relationship with Patroclus provided the emotional catalyst that transformed abstract destiny into concrete action. The deep friendship between the two warriors created the psychological conditions necessary for Achilles' temporary withdrawal from battle and his subsequent devastating return. Patroclus' death while wearing Achilles' armour served multiple purposes within the cosmic design. It provided the motivation for Achilles' reconciliation with Agamemnon, ensured his confrontation with Hector, and created the emotional intensity necessary for the climactic events that would conclude his destined career. The manner of Achilles' death, struck in his vulnerable heel by Paris' arrow guided by Apollo, demonstrated the precision with which fate operated even in apparently random circumstances. His mother's attempt to grant him invulnerability through immersion in the river Styx had succeeded almost completely, yet the small area where her hand held him remained mortal and vulnerable. This detail, which might seem like mere oversight or accident, actually represented the cosmic necessity that ensured his destiny could reach its predetermined conclusion. The royal houses that dominated ancient Greek political and mythological traditions provided equally dramatic illustrations of fate's authority over mortal affairs, though their encounters with predetermined destiny typically extended across multiple generations, rather than focusing on individual choices. The great dynastic cycles revealed how the threads of royal families intertwined to create patterns of rise and fall that served cosmic purposes beyond the immediate interests of the rulers involved. The House of Atreus exemplified the multi-generational operation of cosmic justice through predetermined destiny. The curse that plagued this royal lineage originated with Tantalus, whose violation of divine hospitality created conditions that would influence his descendants for generations. His attempt to test the gods' omniscience by serving them his son Pelops as food represented not merely individual transgression, but a fundamental challenge to the cosmic order that required systematic correction through his family's subsequent history. Pelops' restoration to life and his eventual establishment as a powerful king in the Peloponnese demonstrated how cosmic justice operated through apparent reward as well as punishment. His victories in chariot racing, achieved through both skill and divine favour, created the foundation for his dynasty's power and influence. However, the methods he employed to defeat King Oenomaus bribing the royal charioteer to sabotage his master's vehicle introduced elements of deception and betrayal that would characterize his family's subsequent history. The curse's transmission through successive generations revealed the sophisticated mechanisms through which cosmic justice operated across extended timeframes. Pelops' sons, Atreus and Thyestes, inherited not only their father's kingdom but also the moral debt that his actions had created. Their rivalry over royal succession provided the context within which the family's predetermined destiny continued to unfold, each brother's actions serving to perpetuate and intensify the patterns of violence and retribution that defined their lineage. Atreus' discovery of his wife's adultery with Thyestes created the conditions for the most horrific expression of the family curse. His revenge, killing Thyestes' children and serving them to their father at a feast supposedly intended for reconciliation, represented a deliberate escalation of the violence that had characterized the family's history. This act of cannibalistic revenge ensured that the curse would continue into the next generation, while demonstrating how predetermined destiny operated through individual choices that felt justified to the participants. Thyestes' curse upon Atreus and his descendants provided the mechanism through which cosmic justice would ultimately achieve resolution. His prayer that Atreus' own children would destroy each other established the pattern that would dominate the next generation's experience, ensuring that the family's accumulated moral debt would eventually be paid through their own destruction. The curse operated not as external magical compulsion but as psychological and social momentum that guided subsequent events toward their predetermined conclusions. Agamemnon's sacrifice of his daughter Iphigenia at Aulis demonstrated how the family curse influenced even decisions made for apparently noble purposes. His choice to kill his child in order to secure favourable winds for the Greek expedition to Troy reflected the same pattern of violence and betrayal that had characterized his ancestors' behaviour. The sacrifice served immediate military necessity while perpetuating the cycle of family destruction that would ultimately claim his own life. Clytemnestra's murder of Agamemnon upon his return from Troy represented the curse's continued operation through the mechanism of justified revenge. Her rage at her daughter's sacrifice provided emotional motivation for the killing, while her relationship with Aegisthus, Thyestes' surviving son, created the practical means for accomplishing it. The murder felt both personally justified and politically necessary to the participants, yet it followed patterns established generations earlier through their ancestors' actions. Orestes' matricide completed the cycle of family violence while simultaneously providing the mechanism for the curse's ultimate resolution. His killing of Clytemnestra satisfied the demands of filial duty and divine command, yet it also represented the final expression of the destructive patterns that had dominated his family's history. The intervention of Athena and the Areopagus in his trial created new precedents for justice that transcended the cycle of revenge, allowing the curse to conclude without requiring further bloodshed. The House of Oedipus provided another paradigmatic example of dynastic destiny, though its pattern focused on the relationship between knowledge and fate rather than the transmission of moral debt across generations. The prophecy that dominated this family's history, that Oedipus would kill his father and marry his mother, created conditions where the attempt to avoid predetermined destiny became the very mechanism through which that destiny was fulfilled. Laius' decision to expose his infant son after receiving the oracle's warning represented a rational attempt to prevent the prophesied catastrophe. His actions demonstrated the natural human response to unwelcome prophecy, the assumption that foreknowledge provided the opportunity for prevention. However, his solution created the circumstances that made the prophecy's fulfillment inevitable, illustrating the fundamental paradox that characterized most mortal encounters with predetermined destiny. The rescue of the exposed infant by shepherds initiated the chain of events that would lead inexorably to the prophecy's completion. Oedipus's adoption by the royal family of Corinth provided him with the social position and personal confidence necessary for his eventual confrontation with Laius, while his ignorance of his true parentage ensured that he would not recognize his father when they met. Each element in his upbringing contributed to creating the precise conditions required for the predetermined outcome. Oedipus's consultation of the Delphic oracle upon learning of his supposed illegitimate birth demonstrated the tragic irony that characterized his entire story. His desire to avoid the prophesied crimes led him to flee Corinth, abandoning the only parents he had ever known in order to protect them from harm. This noble intention created the circumstances that brought him into contact with his actual father, transforming his attempt at prevention into the mechanism of fulfillment. The encounter at the crossroads where three roads met provided the setting for patricide that felt entirely justified to both participants. Neither man recognized the other. The conflict arose from a trivial dispute over right of way, and both responded according to the social expectations that governed aristocratic behaviour in such situations. Oedipus's victory in this roadside combat appeared to result from superior skill and determination rather than predetermined destiny, yet every aspect of the encounter had been woven into the cosmic tapestry long before either participant's birth. His arrival at Thebes and successful solution of the Sphinx's riddle created the conditions for the second half of the prophecy's fulfillment. The grateful city's offer of marriage to their widowed queen provided Oedipus with both political power and personal happiness, rewards that seemed to vindicate his earlier decisions and demonstrate his exceptional capabilities. The irony that his intellectual triumph in solving the riddle led directly to his unconscious commission of incest illustrated the sophisticated mechanisms through which fate operated, even through apparent success and achievement. The gradual revelation of his true identity demonstrated how predetermined destiny could remain hidden for years while still exerting influence over events and relationships. His marriage to Jocasta produced children who would themselves become instruments of the family's continuing destiny, while his rule over Thebes created the political and social context within which the truth would eventually emerge. The plague that afflicted the city provided the catalyst for investigation, while his own determination to discover its cause ensured that the inquiry would continue until the full horror of his situation became apparent. The prophetic traditions that surrounded these great heroic and royal cycles revealed the complex relationship between divine knowledge and mortal understanding that characterized ancient Greek religious thought. Oracles, seers, and prophets served as intermediaries between the realm of predetermined destiny and the world of human action, providing mortals with glimpses of their fates while rarely offering clear guidance about how to respond to such knowledge. The Delphic oracle occupied the most prestigious position within this prophetic hierarchy, serving as Apollo's primary instrument for communicating divine knowledge to mortal inquirers. The Pythia's pronouncements carried absolute authority throughout the Greek world, yet their notorious ambiguity often created more confusion than clarity for those seeking guidance. This ambiguity served essential functions within the cosmic order, providing mortals with sufficient knowledge to make meaningful choices while preserving the mystery that made those choices genuinely significant. The oracle's response to Croesus's inquiry about attacking Persia exemplified the sophisticated methods through which prophetic revelation operated. The prediction that he would destroy a great empire if he crossed the river. Halus proved technically accurate while misleading him about which empire would suffer destruction. This ambiguity reflected not divine deception, but the fundamental limitation that prevented complete foreknowledge from undermining the meaningful operation of choice and consequence in mortal affairs. The prophetic mechanisms that revealed glimpses of predetermined destiny to mortals represented only the most visible aspect of a far more comprehensive cosmic system that operated through every level of existence. The Moirai's authority extended beyond individual fates and dynastic cycles to encompass the fundamental structure of reality itself, weaving patterns that maintained universal order through the careful orchestration of natural forces, celestial movements, and the delicate balance between opposing cosmic principles. The three sisters functioned as cosmic engineers whose work ensured that the universe operated according to reliable principles, rather than descending into chaotic randomness. Their loom served as the primary instrument through which abstract cosmic laws manifested in concrete reality, transforming theoretical concepts of order into the actual mechanisms that governed everything from the movement of stars to the growth of grain in mortal fields. This transformation required constant attention to countless variables and their interactions, creating a system of such complexity that even divine consciousness could barely comprehend its full scope. The celestial sphere provided the most visible manifestation of the Moirai's role in maintaining cosmic order. The regular movements of sun, moon, planets and stars followed patterns that had been established through their weaving at the universe's foundation, creating the temporal framework within which all other events unfolded. These astronomical cycles served multiple functions simultaneously. They provided mortals with reliable methods for measuring time and organizing agricultural activities. They created the conditions necessary for seasonal change and biological reproduction. And they maintained the cosmic rhythm that prevented the universe from either stagnating in permanent stasis or accelerating toward destructive chaos. The sun's daily journey across the sky represented one of the most fundamental patterns woven into the cosmic tapestry. Helios drove his golden chariot along the predetermined path that brought light and warmth to the world in precisely measured quantities, ensuring that each region received the illumination necessary for life, while preventing the excessive heat that would destroy it. The regularity of this cycle created the foundation for all temporal measurement, establishing the basic unit of the day that allowed mortals to organize their activities and plan for future needs. The seasonal variations in the sun's path reflected the more complex patterns that governed agricultural cycles and biological rhythms throughout the natural world. The gradual lengthening and shortening of days created the conditions that triggered plant growth in spring, supported maximum productivity during summer, facilitated harvest in autumn, and provided the dormant period necessary for regeneration during winter. These changes occurred according to schedules that had been woven into the cosmic design with mathematical precision, ensuring that each phase of the agricultural year provided exactly the conditions required for successful food production. The moon's phases created another layer of temporal organization that influenced both natural processes and human activities. The regular cycle from new moon through waxing phases to full illumination and back to darkness provided mortals with a reliable method for organizing longer periods than individual days, while the lunar influence on tides created conditions that affected maritime travel, fishing, and coastal agriculture. Women's biological cycles synchronized with lunar phases, connecting human reproduction to the broader cosmic rhythms that governed all life. The wandering stars that ancient observers identified as planets followed more complex paths that required sophisticated mathematical relationships to maintain cosmic harmony. Each planetary orbit had been calculated to interact with all others in ways that preserved overall stability while creating the variations necessary for dynamic rather than static order. Mars traced its eccentric path through the zodiacal constellations, sometimes approaching close to Earth and appearing bright red in the night sky, other times retreating to distant positions where it became barely visible to mortal observers. Venus alternated between its roles as morning and evening star, appearing in the eastern sky before dawn during certain periods and in the western heavens after sunset during others. This dual manifestation reflected the planet's complex orbital relationship with both Earth and the Sun, creating patterns that ancient astronomers struggled to understand, but that served essential functions in maintaining the celestial harmony established by the three sisters. Jupiter's stately progress through the zodiac required nearly 12 years to complete, creating a longer temporal cycle that influenced both astronomical observation and astrological interpretation. The giant planet's gravitational influence helped stabilize the orbits of smaller worlds, while its regular movement provided ancient observers with a reliable method for organising longer periods of time into meaningful units. The fixed stars maintained their relative positions throughout human lifetimes, creating the stable background against which planetary movements could be measured and understood. The constellations served as celestial landmarks that allowed navigators to determine their positions during sea voyages, while the annual cycle of stellar visibility provided farmers with reliable indicators for timing agricultural activities. The rising of particular stars before dawn marked specific seasons with precision that surpassed any human-made calendar system. The Moirai's management of these astronomical cycles required constant attention to the gravitational interactions between celestial bodies, the distribution of matter throughout space, and the energy flows that powered stellar processes. Their cosmic loom operated on scales that encompassed entire galaxies while maintaining precision sufficient to control the timing of individual sunrise and sunset events. This combination of universal scope with minute attention to detail demonstrated the sophisticated nature of their cosmic administration. The relationship between celestial movements and terrestrial events revealed the interconnected nature of the cosmic order that the three sisters maintained. The positions of planets and stars at the moment of each mortal's birth created specific configurations that influenced the individual's destiny throughout life. Not through magical compulsion, but through the complex resonances that connected all parts of the universal system. These astrological influences operated within the broader framework established by each person's predetermined fate, providing variations and modifications rather than overriding fundamental patterns. The elemental forces that shaped terrestrial conditions operated according to principles that reflected the same cosmic order governing celestial movements. Earth, air, fire, and water interacted through carefully balanced relationships that maintained the conditions necessary for life, while preventing any single element from achieving dominance that would destroy the others. The Moirai's weaving established the fundamental ratios and interaction patterns that governed these elemental relationships, ensuring stability while preserving the dynamic tensions necessary for change and growth. The geological processes that shaped the physical landscape followed predetermined patterns that served both immediate practical needs and long-term cosmic purposes. Mountain ranges rose according to schedules that created the geographical diversity necessary for different types of human civilization, while river systems carved valleys that provided transportation routes and fertile agricultural land. Volcanic activity released internal pressures that might otherwise build to catastrophic levels, while earthquakes redistributed stresses that accumulated through tectonic movements. The atmospheric circulation patterns that created weather systems operated through complex interactions between solar heating, planetary rotation, and geographical features. The Moirai's design ensured that these interactions produced climate variations that supported diverse ecosystems while maintaining overall stability that prevented either permanent drought or continuous flooding. Storm systems developed according to natural laws that created necessary rainfall while limiting destructive potential through built-in dissipation mechanisms. Ocean currents flowed along predetermined paths that distributed heat from equatorial regions toward the poles while carrying nutrients that supported marine life throughout the seas. These currents interacted with atmospheric patterns to create the complex climate systems that determined regional weather patterns, ensuring that each area receives the combination of temperature and precipitation necessary for its designated role in the global ecosystem. The biological cycles that governed plant and animal reproduction synchronized with astronomical and seasonal patterns to maintain ecological balance across all environments. Flowering plants timed their blooms to coincide with the availability of pollinating insects, while fruiting occurred when animals needed food sources and could serve as seed dispersers. Migratory species followed routes and schedules that had been woven into their instinctual patterns, ensuring that they arrived at breeding and feeding grounds when conditions were optimal. The human agricultural calendar developed in response to these natural cycles, with farming communities learning to plant, cultivate and harvest according to the cosmic rhythms established by the Moirai's eternal weaving. The timing of these activities required precise coordination with weather patterns, soil conditions, and the life cycles of both crops and the insects or animals that affected their growth. Successful agriculture depended on understanding and working within these predetermined natural patterns rather than attempting to impose arbitrary human schedules on cosmic processes. The relationship between individual human destinies and these larger cosmic cycles reveal the sophisticated methods through which the three sisters integrated personal fates into universal order. Each person's thread contained not only the specific events and relationships that would define their individual experience, but also the precise timing that would synchronize their personal story with the broader patterns affecting their community and civilization. Birth timing reflected this integration most clearly, with each child entering the world at the exact moment when celestial configurations, seasonal conditions, and social circumstances combined to create optimal conditions for their particular destiny. The astrological influences present at birth provided the basic framework within which the individual's personality and capabilities would develop, while seasonal factors affected everything from available food sources to the social activities that would shape early childhood experiences. The coordination of multiple individual destinies within communities required even more sophisticated planning and execution. The three sisters had to ensure that the right people encountered each other at precisely the correct moments, that economic and political conditions developed according to schedules that supported necessary social changes, and that technological innovations appeared when civilizations were ready to utilize them effectively. The rise and fall of entire civilizations followed patterns that reflected cosmic cycles operating on scales far beyond individual human lifespans. The Moirai's weaving established the conditions that would allow particular cultures to flourish during specific historical periods, while ensuring that their eventual decline would create opportunities for different civilizations to develop and contribute their own elements to human progress. These civilizational cycles operated according to principles similar to those governing seasonal change, with periods of growth, maturity, decline and renewal following predetermined sequences that served the long-term development of human potential. The transmission of knowledge and cultural achievements between civilizations occurred according to timing that ensured essential discoveries and insights would not be lost during periods of political upheaval or social transformation. Trade routes, diplomatic contacts and population movements created the mechanisms through which important innovations spread, from their points of origin to communities that could preserve and develop them further. The Moirai's planning ensured that crucial knowledge would survive the collapse of individual civilizations and remain available for future generations to rediscover and utilize. The development of human understanding about cosmic order itself followed predetermined patterns that gradually revealed more sophisticated appreciation for the universe's fundamental principles. Early civilizations developed basic astronomical observations that allowed them to create calendars and predict seasonal changes. Later cultures built upon this foundation to create more complex mathematical and philosophical systems that approached deeper understanding of cosmic harmony and universal law. The emergence of philosophical schools and religious traditions that recognized the Moirai's authority represented important milestones in humanity's intellectual and spiritual development. These traditions provided frameworks for understanding individual destiny within cosmic context, helping people accept their predetermined fates while finding meaning and purpose in their specific roles within the universal order. The timing of these developments coincided with civilizational conditions that made such sophisticated thinking possible and socially beneficial. The prophetic traditions that emerged within various cultures served as mechanisms for communicating cosmic knowledge to mortals, who needed guidance in navigating their predetermined destinies. Oracles, seers, and diviners developed techniques for accessing information about future events and cosmic patterns, though their revelations typically came in forms that required interpretation and reflection, rather than providing simple answers to immediate questions. The ambiguous nature of most prophetic communications reflected the cosmic necessity of preserving human agency within predetermined frameworks. Complete foreknowledge would eliminate the meaningful choices that made mortal existence significant, while total ignorance would prevent people from making decisions that aligned with cosmic purposes. The carefully calibrated revelation, provided by authentic prophetic sources, gave mortals sufficient information to make wise choices while preserving the uncertainty that made those choices genuinely meaningful. The prophetic revelations that connected mortals to cosmic knowledge found their practical expression through an elaborate system of ceremonial practices that honoured the Moirai while acknowledging their absolute authority over human destiny. These rituals developed organically within Greek communities over centuries, creating a complex web of observances that marked every significant transition in mortal life, from birth to death. Unlike the grand festivals dedicated to the Olympian gods, ceremonies honouring the three sisters typically occurred in intimate settings, where families and small communities gathered to acknowledge fate's role in shaping their experiences. Birth rituals represented the most fundamental category of ceremonial practice associated with the Moirai, reflecting the universal recognition that each new life entered the world according to predetermined patterns established at the cosmic loom. These observances began before the actual moment of delivery, when expectant mothers and their female relatives performed purification rites designed to prepare the household for receiving a soul whose destiny had already been woven into the universal tapestry. The women gathered herbs that corresponded to different aspects of fate's operation: white flowers to honour Clotho's role in beginning new life, yellow blooms that reflected Lachesis' measurement of life's experiences, and dark leaves that acknowledged Atropos' eventual authority over death. The birthing chamber itself became a sacred space where the boundary between predetermined destiny and lived experience grew thin enough for mortal perception. Midwives, who served as unofficial priestesses during these crucial moments, arranged 3 oil lamps in a triangular pattern around the labouring woman, each flame representing one of the sisters and their specific functions. The lamps burned throughout the delivery process, their flickering light creating shadows that seemed to dance according to patterns that reflected the cosmic weaving taking place beyond mortal sight. The moment of birth triggered specific ritual responses that acknowledged the new thread's addition to the cosmic tapestry. The midwife examined the umbilical cord's appearance and length, interpreting these physical characteristics as indicators of the child's destined lifespan and the complexity of experiences that awaited them. A thick, robust cord suggested a destiny filled with significant challenges and achievements, while a thinner strand might indicate a quieter life focused on family relationships and community service. The cord's colour variations provided additional information about the child's future temperament and the types of experiences that would shape their character development. The first cry that announced successful birth carried particular significance in these ceremonial contexts. Experienced midwives listened carefully to the infant's initial sounds, interpreting their pitch, duration and intensity as communications from the 3 sisters about the child's predetermined nature. A strong, clear cry indicated a destiny involving leadership or public recognition, while softer sounds suggested a life dedicated to scholarship, artistic creation, or spiritual development. The timing of the first cry relative to the moment of complete delivery provided additional clues about how quickly the child would reach significant milestones in their destined journey. The placenta's examination formed another crucial element in birth rituals associated with the Moirai. This organ, which had sustained the child throughout gestation, was believed to contain physical evidence of the cosmic forces that had shaped the pregnancy according to predetermined patterns. Midwives studied its size, shape, and the distribution of blood vessels across its surface, reading these features like a map that revealed important information about the child's future path. The placenta's burial location was chosen with equal care, typically in a spot where 3 paths converged, or beneath a tree that had been struck by lightning, connecting the child's physical origin to cosmic forces that would influence their entire existence. Naming ceremonies that followed successful births incorporated specific acknowledgements of the Moirai's role in determining each child's identity and destiny. Parents consulted elderly relatives, local seers, and sometimes travelling oracles to select names that would harmonise with the cosmic patterns revealed during the birth process. These consultations involved careful analysis of the child's birth timing, the celestial configurations present at delivery, and the physical characteristics that suggested particular aspects of their predetermined nature. The actual naming ritual typically occurred on the 7th day after birth, a timing that reflected the 7 visible celestial bodies and their combined influence on mortal destiny. The ceremony began at dawn, when the boundary between night and day created optimal conditions for communicating with cosmic forces. The infant was presented to representatives of the community, while family members recited genealogies that connected the child to ancestral patterns and hereditary destinies that would influence their future development. The chosen name was announced 3 times, once to honour each of the sisters and to ensure that the cosmic forces governing destiny recognised the child's official identity. Between each announcement, participants poured libations of wine, milk, and honey onto the ground, creating offerings that acknowledged the 3 sisters' authority while requesting their continued protection and guidance. The libations were poured in specific patterns that reflected the triangular arrangement associated with the Moirai, creating temporary sacred geometries that connected the earthly ceremony to cosmic order. Protective amulets fashioned during these naming ceremonies served as permanent reminders of the child's connection to predetermined destiny. Skilled craftswomen created these talismans using materials that corresponded to the specific aspects of fate revealed during the birth process. Thread from the mother's wedding garments provided connection to family destiny patterns, while metals corresponding to the child's birth timing created links to celestial influences. The amulets incorporated symbols representing each of the 3 sisters: spindles for Clotho, measuring rods for Lachesis, and small shears for Atropos. The mystery religions that flourished throughout the Greek world developed sophisticated initiatory practices that incorporated the Moirai into their theological frameworks while offering adherents deeper understanding of destiny's operation in both mortal and divine realms. These secret traditions attracted individuals seeking more comprehensive knowledge about cosmic order than could be obtained through conventional religious observances, providing initiates with experiential encounters with the forces that governed universal destiny. Orphic traditions occupied a particularly prominent position within this mystery landscape, developing elaborate mythologies that placed the 3 sisters at the centre of cosmic creation and spiritual development. Orphic theology described the universe's origin through a complex process involving multiple generations of divine beings, with the Moirai emerging as fundamental forces that shaped not only individual destinies, but the basic structure of reality itself. These teachings provided initiates with sophisticated understanding of how personal spiritual development connected to universal patterns established through the sisters' eternal weaving. The Orphic creation myth described Kronos, the personification of time itself, as the primordial force from which all existence emerged. This cosmic principle generated ether and chaos through its fundamental nature, creating the basic conditions within which ordered existence could develop. The Moirai appeared during the early phases of this creation process, emerging as the cosmic principles that would translate abstract temporal flow into specific patterns of destiny that governed all subsequent development. Orphic initiatory practices involved carefully structured experiences designed to provide adherents with direct encounters with these cosmic forces rather than merely intellectual understanding of their theoretical operation. The initiation process typically began with purification rituals that prepared candidates for receiving sacred knowledge by removing the spiritual obstacles that prevented clear perception of cosmic truth. These purifications involved dietary restrictions, ritual bathing, and meditation practices that gradually refined the initiate's consciousness until it became capable of perceiving realities normally hidden from mortal awareness. The central mystery experiences involved symbolic deaths and rebirths that allowed initiates to experience the process through which souls moved between different states of existence according to patterns established by the three sisters. These ritualized transitions provided direct understanding of how individual consciousness related to cosmic order, revealing the mechanisms through which predetermined destiny manifested in personal experience while preserving meaningful agency within established boundaries. Sacred drama formed a crucial component of these mystery initiations, with participants reenacting mythological narratives that illustrated the Moirai's role in cosmic governance. These performances went beyond simple theatrical presentation to create immersive experiences where initiates temporarily assume the roles of divine beings, heroes, and cosmic forces. Through these dramatic embodiments, participants gained experiential knowledge of how different levels of existence related to each other within the universal order maintained by the three sisters. The most advanced Orphic mysteries involved encounters with representations of the sisters themselves, though these experiences occurred through symbolic rather than literal manifestation. Initiates who had completed preliminary stages of preparation participated in ceremonies where masked figures representing Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos demonstrated the cosmic processes that govern destiny's operation. These ritual encounters provided profound insights into the nature of predetermined fate, while revealing how individual spiritual development could align with cosmic purposes rather than opposing them. Votive offerings dedicated to the Moirai reflected the complex relationship between mortal supplication and divine immutability that characterized ancient Greek religious thought. Despite widespread understanding that the three sisters' decisions could not be altered through conventional means, communities and individuals continued to present offerings that acknowledged their authority while expressing hopes for favorable treatment within predetermined boundaries. These offerings demonstrated sophisticated theological understanding that distinguished between changing fate itself and receiving divine assistance in accepting and navigating predetermined circumstances. Thread and textile offerings form the most common category of votive gifts presented to the Moirai, reflecting both their association with weaving and the symbolic significance of these materials in representing life's interconnected nature. Worshippers brought samples of their finest work to temples and sacred sites, presenting embroidered cloths, woven garments, and decorative textiles that demonstrated their skill while acknowledging the sisters' superior mastery of cosmic weaving. These offerings typically incorporated symbolic elements that reflected the giver's specific circumstances and concerns. Wedding garments sought blessings for marital harmony, baby clothes requested protection for newborns, and funeral shrouds expressed acceptance of mortality while hoping for peaceful transitions. The creation process for these textile offerings involved ritual elements that transformed ordinary craftswork into sacred communication with cosmic forces. Women gathered in groups to spin, weave, and embroider while reciting prayers and hymns that honoured the three sisters and their cosmic functions. The work proceeded according to specific timing that coordinated with lunar phases and seasonal transitions, ensuring that the creative process aligned with natural rhythms established through the Moirai's cosmic administration. Metalwork offerings reflected different aspects of the relationship between mortal craftsmanship and divine authority over destiny. Bronze mirrors polished to perfect reflectivity symbolized the clarity of vision that allowed the sisters to perceive all aspects of cosmic order simultaneously. Silver cups and bowls represented the vessels through which divine will flowed into mortal experience, while iron implements acknowledged the strength and permanence of predetermined patterns that governed universal development. The most precious votive offerings took the form of golden objects that incorporated sophisticated artistic techniques and valuable materials. These gifts typically commemorated significant life events or marked important transitions that required divine acknowledgement and blessing. Golden spindles honoured Clotho's role in beginning new ventures. Measuring rods crafted from precious metals recognised Lachesis' authority over life's distribution, and miniature shears acknowledged Atropos' power over endings and transitions. Agricultural offerings reflected the connection between cosmic order and the natural cycles that supported mortal life. Farmers presented first fruits from their harvests, acknowledging that successful crops depended on the coordination of countless factors that operated according to patterns established by the three sisters. These offerings included grains that represented the basic sustenance necessary for survival, fruits that symbolized abundance and prosperity, and vegetables that demonstrated the diversity of nature's productivity under divine guidance. The timing of agricultural offerings coordinated with seasonal transitions and astronomical events that marked significant points in the cosmic calendar. Spring presentations coincided with planting seasons, when farmers requested favourable conditions for seed germination and crop establishment. Summer offerings occurred during periods of maximum growth, expressing gratitude for adequate rainfall and protection from destructive storms. Autumn ceremonies marked harvest completion, while requesting continued divine favour for food preservation and winter survival. Funeral rites associated with the Moirai represented the most solemn and significant ceremonial practices that acknowledged their authority over mortal existence. These observances recognised that death occurred according to predetermined timing that served cosmic purposes beyond individual preferences, while providing communities with structured methods for processing grief and facilitating the deceased's transition to whatever afterlife awaited them, according to their destined patterns. The preparation of bodies for burial involved specific ritual elements that honoured the three sisters while ensuring proper spiritual transition for the departed. Female relatives washed the corpse using water that had been blessed through invocations to each sister, acknowledging their respective roles in the life that had concluded. The washing process proceeded according to established patterns that symbolically reversed the stages of life, beginning with the head that had housed consciousness, moving through the torso that had contained vital organs, and concluding with the extremities that had enabled interaction with the physical world. Clothing selection for burial reflected careful consideration of the deceased's predetermined destiny and their spiritual needs for the afterlife journey. Garments chosen for this purpose incorporated symbolic elements that would assist the soul in navigating the challenges that awaited them beyond physical existence. White fabrics represented purity and spiritual preparation, while darker materials acknowledged the mystery and solemnity of death's transition. Decorative elements sewn into burial clothing often included symbols associated with the three sisters: spinning wheels, measuring devices, and cutting implements that would remind the deceased of the cosmic forces that had shaped their mortal experience. The placement of grave goods reflected beliefs about the continued operation of destiny beyond physical death. Personal belongings that had played significant roles in the deceased's life were selected for burial based on their potential utility in whatever existence awaited them, according to their predetermined spiritual destination. Tools and implements that had enabled the person to fulfill their earthly destiny might continue serving similar functions in the afterlife, while decorative objects that had brought joy during mortal existence could provide comfort during the transition to spiritual existence. Funeral processions incorporated specific acknowledgements of the Moirai's role in determining the timing and circumstances of death. mourners carried branches from trees that had been struck by lightning, symbolizing the sudden and irrevocable nature of fate's final decision. The procession route typically included stops at 3 locations that corresponded to the sisters' individual functions. A place associated with birth or new beginnings honoured Clotho, a site connected to community life or measurement acknowledged Lachesis, and a location linked to endings or transitions recognised Atropos. Graveside ceremonies concluded with libations and offerings that facilitated the deceased's spiritual journey while acknowledging the cosmic order that governed both life and death. Wine poured onto the grave provided sustenance for the departing soul, while milk and honey offered comfort and sweetness for the difficult transition ahead. These libations were presented in quantities that reflected the 3 sisters' authority. 3 cups for each type of offering, poured at 3 different locations around the grave, accompanied by 3 repetitions of the deceased's name and their ancestral lineage. The memorial practices that followed burial demonstrated ongoing recognition of the Moirai's continued influence over both the deceased and their surviving relatives. Annual commemorative ceremonies marked the anniversary of death while acknowledging that the departed continued to exist according to patterns established through their predetermined destiny. These observances provided opportunities for families to maintain connections with deceased relatives while accepting that those relationships now operated within different cosmic contexts than had been possible during shared mortal existence. These practices that sustained connections between the living and deceased operated within a broader network of prophetic communication that served as the primary interface between mortal understanding and the cosmic knowledge possessed by the 3 sisters. This prophetic system functioned through carefully maintained channels that allowed glimpses of predetermined destiny to reach human consciousness without overwhelming mortal minds with the complete scope of cosmic planning. The oracles, seers, and diviners who served as intermediaries in this communication process occupied unique positions within ancient Greek society, simultaneously revered for their access to divine knowledge and isolated by the terrible burden of perceiving truths that others could neither comprehend nor alter. The oracle at Delphi represented the most sophisticated and influential manifestation of this prophetic network, serving as Apollo's primary instrument for translating the Moirai's cosmic decrees into forms that mortals could receive and interpret. The sacred site itself had been chosen according to geological and astronomical factors that created optimal conditions for prophetic communication, positioned at the intersection of underground fissures that released vapours believed to facilitate divine inspiration, while aligned with celestial configurations that enhanced the flow of cosmic knowledge from divine to human consciousness. The Pythia who served as Apollo's mouthpiece underwent extensive preparation that transformed her from ordinary mortal woman into a vessel capable of receiving and transmitting divine revelations. This preparation process began with ritual purification that removed the spiritual obstacles that normally prevented human consciousness from accessing cosmic knowledge. She bathed in the sacred Castalian spring, whose waters had been blessed through centuries of use in prophetic rituals, while consuming specially prepared foods that refined her physical constitution until it could withstand the intense spiritual energies involved in divine communication. The prophetic chamber beneath the temple contained physical arrangements that facilitated the transition between normal human awareness and the expanded consciousness necessary for receiving divine messages. The sacred tripod on which the Pythia sat during prophetic sessions had been positioned directly above the geological fissures that released intoxicating vapours, creating conditions that altered her mental state while maintaining sufficient coherence for articulate communication. The chamber's acoustic properties amplified and clarified her utterances, ensuring that the divine messages could be accurately recorded by the priests who interpreted and transmitted her pronouncements to inquiring mortals. The process through which divine knowledge flowed from the Moirai through Apollo to the Pythia involved complex transformations that adapted cosmic truth to the limitations of human understanding. The three sisters possessed complete knowledge of all predetermined patterns, seeing past, present, and future simultaneously in their full complexity and interconnection. Apollo, as the god of prophecy, served as an intermediary who could access this cosmic knowledge while understanding the constraints that governed its communication to mortals. The Pythia functioned as the final link in this chain, translating divine revelation into human language while preserving its essential truth despite the limitations imposed by mortal consciousness and linguistic expression. The cryptic nature of Delphic pronouncements reflected the sophisticated balance that prophetic communication maintained between revelation and concealment. Complete foreknowledge would eliminate the meaningful choices that made mortal existence significant, while total ignorance would prevent humans from making decisions that aligned with cosmic purposes. The oracular responses provided sufficient information to guide important decisions while preserving the uncertainty that made those decisions genuinely consequential and spiritually meaningful. The famous prophecy delivered to Croesus of Lydia exemplified the precise calibration that characterized authentic divine communication. When the wealthy king inquired whether he should attack the Persian Empire, the oracle responded that if he crossed the river Alers, he would destroy a great empire. This prediction proved technically accurate, while avoiding the direct guidance that would have eliminated Croesus's need to exercise judgment and accept responsibility for his choices. The prophecy provided genuine divine knowledge about the outcome of his potential action, while preserving his agency in deciding whether to proceed with the military campaign. The ambiguity that characterized most oracular responses served multiple functions within the cosmic order maintained by the three sisters. It prevented mortals from using divine knowledge to circumvent the natural consequences of their actions, while ensuring that those who possessed the wisdom to interpret prophetic communications correctly could benefit from divine guidance. The ambiguity also protected the cosmic order itself by preventing widespread knowledge of predetermined patterns from undermining the social and psychological structures that made civilized existence possible. The interpretation of oracular responses required specialized knowledge and spiritual insight that distinguished authentic seers from mere fortune-tellers or charlatans. Legitimate interpreters understood the symbolic language through which divine truth was communicated, recognizing the multiple levels of meaning that characterized genuine prophetic revelation. They possessed extensive knowledge of mythological parallels, historical precedents, and cosmic principles that enable them to decode the metaphorical expressions through which the Moirai's knowledge reached human consciousness. The Sibyls represented another category of prophetic figure whose authority derived from direct inspiration by the cosmic forces that governed destiny rather than institutional position within established religious hierarchies. These women received their prophetic abilities through personal encounters with divine powers that transformed their consciousness permanently, creating ongoing access to cosmic knowledge that operated independently of formal temple structures or priestly mediation. The Sibyls typically lived as hermits or wanderers, their prophetic gifts isolating them from normal social relationships, while providing them with insights that transcended the limitations of conventional human experience. The Cumean Sibyl achieved particular fame for her longevity and the scope of her prophetic knowledge, living for centuries while maintaining access to divine revelation that encompassed both immediate future events and long-term cosmic patterns. Her cave near Naples became a pilgrimage destination for individuals seeking guidance about personal destinies and rulers requiring insight into political developments that would affect their kingdoms. The physical environment of her prophetic chamber created conditions similar to those at Delphi, with geological features that facilitated the altered states of consciousness necessary for receiving divine communication. Her prophetic books, written on palm leaves that were arranged according to cosmic patterns, contained revelations about future events that extended far beyond the immediate concerns of contemporary inquirers. These texts described the rise and fall of empires, the development of new religious traditions, and the gradual unfolding of human civilization according to patterns established by the three sisters at the universe's foundation. The book's organization reflected the complex temporal relationships that characterized cosmic planning, with prophecies about distant future events interwoven with predictions about immediate circumstances in patterns that revealed the interconnected nature of all historical development. The preservation and interpretation of Sibylline prophecies required specialized knowledge that connected immediate political and social circumstances to the broader cosmic patterns that governed long-term historical development. The custodians of these texts understood how individual events related to larger cycles of rise and decline that affected entire civilizations, enabling them to provide guidance that served both immediate practical needs and long-term spiritual development. Their interpretations helped rulers and communities align their decisions with cosmic purposes, while accepting the predetermined nature of major historical transitions. Local seers and diviners throughout the Greek world served as intermediaries between the cosmic knowledge possessed by major oracles and the immediate practical needs of ordinary communities. These figures typically received their prophetic abilities through hereditary transmission, personal spiritual experiences, or apprenticeship with established practitioners who could teach the techniques necessary for accessing divine revelation. Their authority operated within limited geographical areas and focused on the types of concerns that affected daily life, rather than the grand historical patterns that preoccupied major oracular centers. Village seers specialized in interpreting the natural signs through which the Moirai communicated information about local conditions and immediate future developments. They observed the flight patterns of birds, understanding how these creatures' behavior reflected the cosmic forces that influenced weather patterns, agricultural conditions, and social developments within their communities. Different species provided information about different aspects of local destiny. Eagles indicated developments related to political authority and military affairs, while smaller songbirds revealed information about domestic concerns, agricultural prospects, and community relationships. The interpretation of bird flight required extensive knowledge of seasonal patterns, territorial behaviors, and the symbolic associations that connected different species to various aspects of cosmic order. Seers learned to distinguish between normal behavioral patterns and the unusual movements that indicated divine communication, understanding how factors such as wind direction, time of day, and celestial configurations influenced the significance of observed phenomena. The accuracy of their interpretations depended on their ability to integrate multiple variables while recognizing the broader cosmic context within which local events unfolded. Haruspicy, the practice of examining sacrificial animals' internal organs to divine future events, represented another sophisticated method for accessing cosmic knowledge through natural phenomena. Skilled practitioners understood how the Moirai's influence manifested in the physical structures of living creatures, reading the patterns revealed in liver configurations, heart abnormalities, and intestinal arrangements as communications about predetermined developments that would affect the communities requesting guidance. The liver served as the primary focus for haruspical divination, because ancient understanding recognized this organ as the center of life force and the location where cosmic influences most clearly manifested in physical form. Diviners examined the liver's size, color, texture, and the distribution of blood vessels across its surface, interpreting these features according to established correspondences that connected physical characteristics to cosmic patterns. Unusual formations, discolorations, or structural abnormalities indicated specific types of future developments, while the overall condition of the organ provided general information about the cosmic forces influencing the community's immediate destiny. The heart's examination provided additional information about the emotional and spiritual aspects of predicted developments, while the condition of other organs revealed details about specific areas of concern such as agriculture, warfare, or religious matters. The integration of information from multiple organs created comprehensive pictures of future circumstances that enabled communities to prepare for predicted developments while accepting their predetermined nature. Sacred lots represented the most accessible form of divination, allowing individuals and communities to receive divine guidance about immediate decisions without requiring the specialized knowledge necessary for interpreting natural phenomena or accessing major oracular centers. The casting of lots operated through the principle that random events could serve as vehicles for divine communication when conducted within appropriate ritual contexts that invited cosmic intervention in the selection process. The lots themselves were crafted from materials that possessed symbolic significance related to the cosmic forces they were intended to access. Wooden tokens carved from trees that had been struck by lightning carried the authority of divine power, while stones selected from locations where 3 roads met incorporated the tripartite nature of the Moirai's authority. Metal lots forged during specific astronomical configurations created connections to celestial influences that affected the cosmic patterns governing immediate circumstances. The ritual contexts within which lots were cast created the spiritual conditions necessary for authentic divine communication rather than mere random selection. Participants underwent purification procedures that prepared them for receiving cosmic guidance, while the physical arrangements of the casting process incorporated symbolic elements that invited the 3 sisters' intervention. The lots were typically cast within sacred enclosures that had been consecrated through appropriate ceremonies, often at locations that possessed natural features associated with divine presence such as springs, caves, or groves. The interpretation of lot casting results required understanding of the symbolic systems that connected random outcomes to cosmic knowledge. Different combinations of lots indicated various types of future developments, while the patterns formed by their arrangement provided additional information about timing, intensity, and the broader context within which predicted events would unfold. Skilled interpreters could read these patterns as communications from the Moirai about the cosmic forces influencing specific situations and the predetermined outcomes that would result from different courses of action. The psychological burden carried by those who possessed authentic prophetic abilities created profound isolation that separated them from normal human relationships and social participation. The knowledge of predetermined destiny, particularly when it involved suffering or tragedy that could not be prevented, imposed emotional and spiritual costs that few mortals could bear without experiencing significant psychological distress. Prophets and seers often develop reputations for melancholy or madness, their access to cosmic truth creating mental states that appeared abnormal to those who remained ignorant of fate's predetermined patterns. Cassandra of Troy represented the archetypal example of prophetic isolation, cursed with the ability to perceive future events accurately while being doomed to have her warnings ignored or disbelieved. Her prophetic gift, received from Apollo as part of a complex divine relationship, provided her with clear knowledge of Troy's destined destruction and the specific events that would lead to that catastrophe. However, her inability to convince others of her vision's accuracy created a situation where she experienced the full psychological impact of foreknowledge without being able to use that knowledge to prevent the suffering she foresaw. The curse that prevented others from believing Cassandra's prophecies served essential functions within the cosmic order maintained by the 3 sisters. If her warnings had been heeded and acted upon, the Trojan War might have been prevented or concluded differently, disrupting the predetermined patterns that served larger cosmic purposes. Her isolation ensured that the war would unfold according to the designs woven into the cosmic tapestry, while providing her with the spiritual development that came through accepting the limitations of prophetic knowledge and the predetermined nature of cosmic order. The relationship between prophetic knowledge and personal agency created philosophical and spiritual challenges that affected all individuals who possessed authentic access to divine revelation. The knowledge that future events were predetermined could lead to fatalistic acceptance that eliminated motivation for action, while the awareness that individual choices remained meaningful within predetermined boundaries required sophisticated understanding of how cosmic order operated through human agency rather than despite it. Authentic prophets learned to navigate these challenges by understanding their role as instruments of cosmic communication rather than controllers of destiny. Their function involved facilitating the flow of divine knowledge to those who needed guidance, while accepting that they could not alter the fundamental patterns that governed universal development. This acceptance required spiritual maturity that transcended personal desires and emotional attachments, enabling prophets to serve cosmic purposes even when those purposes involved personal sacrifice or the suffering of people they cared about. The training and initiation processes that prepared individuals for prophetic service incorporated spiritual disciplines designed to develop the psychological resilience necessary for bearing the burden of cosmic knowledge. Apprentice seers learned meditation techniques that enabled them to maintain emotional equilibrium while accessing divine revelation, while ritual practices created the spiritual protection necessary for regular contact with the cosmic forces that could overwhelm unprepared consciousness. The spiritual disciplines that shaped authentic prophetic consciousness found their ultimate expression in the grand heroic narratives that dominated ancient Greek collective memory, where mortal champions discovered that even their extraordinary capabilities remained subject to the predetermined patterns woven by the three sisters. These epic tales revealed how individual excellence, divine favour, and heroic ambition operated within cosmic boundaries that could not be transcended through strength, cunning, or supernatural assistance. The heroes whose stories captivated generations of listeners learned that their destinies served purposes far greater than personal glory, individual threads contributing to vast tapestries that encompassed the rise and fall of civilizations. The Trojan War represented the most comprehensive demonstration of the Moirai's cosmic authority, a conflict that began with divine vanity and concluded with the predetermined destruction of an entire civilization. The war's origins traced back to the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, where Eris cast the golden apple inscribed to the fairest among the assembled goddesses, creating the dispute that would eventually ignite the most famous conflict in ancient literature. This seemingly random act of divine mischief actually served as the catalyst through which cosmic necessity manifested in historical events, providing the mechanism that would bring about predetermined changes in the balance of power between East and West. The judgment of Paris operated as the specific trigger that transformed abstract cosmic planning into concrete political circumstances. The young Trojan prince faced a choice between three goddesses that appeared to offer genuine alternatives. Hera promised political power and dominion over vast territories. Athena offered wisdom and victory in battle, while Aphrodite tempted him with the love of the world's most beautiful woman. His selection of Aphrodite's gift seemed to result from personal preference and youthful desire, yet the choice itself had been predetermined as part of the larger pattern that would bring about Troy's destined destruction. Helen's abduction from Sparta created the immediate cause for Greek military intervention, yet the deeper cosmic purpose involved the systematic elimination of a generation of heroes whose continued existence would have disrupted the natural progression of human civilization. The war served as a mechanism for removing figures whose extraordinary capabilities had begun to blur the boundaries between mortal and divine existence, threatening the cosmic order that required clear distinctions between different levels of being. Achilles, Hector, Ajax, and countless other champions possessed abilities that approached divine levels, their deaths at Troy ensuring that mortal humanity would return to more manageable proportions. The siege itself unfolded according to patterns that demonstrated the Moirai's sophisticated orchestration of complex historical events. The conflict's duration, lasting precisely 10 years, reflected cosmic cycles that governed the rise and decline of civilizations. While the specific battles and individual heroic encounters followed predetermined sequences that served multiple purposes simultaneously. Each major engagement eliminated particular heroes according to their destined times, while advancing the overall narrative toward its inevitable conclusion with Troy's complete destruction. Achilles' participation in the war exemplified how individual heroic destiny operated within the broader cosmic framework. His predetermined choice between long life and eternal glory had already established the basic parameters of his involvement, yet the specific circumstances that activated his decision emerged naturally from the political and military developments that characterized the siege's progression. His initial enthusiasm for the expedition, his withdrawal from combat following the dispute with Agamemnon, and his devastating return to battle after Patroclus' death all followed psychological patterns that had been woven into his thread at the moment of his birth. The relationship between Achilles and Patroclus served cosmic purposes that transcended their personal friendship, creating the emotional catalyst necessary for the war's climactic phase. Patroclus' death while wearing Achilles' armour provided the specific motivation required to bring the greatest Greek warrior back into combat, while his funeral games created opportunities for reconciliation between Achilles and Agamemnon that served the army's tactical needs. The cosmic planning that orchestrated these events operated through authentic human emotions and relationships rather than external compulsion, ensuring that the participants experienced their roles as meaningful personal choices rather than arbitrary divine manipulation. Hector's role as Troy's primary defender demonstrated how heroic excellence could serve predetermined destruction rather than preventing it. His courage, tactical skill, and devotion to family and city created the resistance necessary to prolong the siege for its destined duration, while ensuring that Troy's eventual fall would carry maximum emotional and symbolic impact. His individual victories against Greek champions served to eliminate specific heroes according to their predetermined fates, while building towards his own inevitable confrontation with Achilles. The single combat between Hector and Achilles represented the convergence of multiple destiny threads that had been developing throughout the war's progression. Both warriors approached this encounter knowing that it would likely prove fatal for one of them, yet neither could avoid the meeting because their entire heroic identities had been constructed around the values and obligations that made such combat inevitable. Hector fought to defend his city and family, while Achilles sought revenge for Patroclus' death, both motivations serving cosmic purposes that neither warrior fully comprehended. The manner of Hector's death, killed by Achilles' spear thrust through the gap in his armour near the throat, reflected the precision with which fate operated even in the chaos of individual combat. This vulnerable spot had been identified earlier in the poem, when Hector first donned Achilles' armour taken from Patroclus' corpse, establishing the specific weakness that would eventually prove fatal. The cosmic planning that orchestrated this detail ensured that Hector's death would occur through tactical knowledge and martial skill rather than divine intervention, preserving the authenticity of heroic combat while serving predetermined narrative purposes. Perseus' quest to slay Medusa revealed how divine assistance operated within the framework of predetermined destiny rather than circumventing it. The hero received supernatural aid from Athena and Hermes, who provided him with the reflective shield, winged sandals, and other magical equipment necessary for approaching the Gorgon safely. This divine support appeared to offer Perseus advantages that transcended normal mortal limitations, yet the assistance itself had been predetermined as part of his destined path toward heroic achievement. The specific challenges Perseus faced during his quest served to develop the psychological and spiritual qualities necessary for his ultimate role as founder of Mycenae and ancestor of future heroes. His encounter with the Graeae, who shared a single eye and tooth among them, required him to demonstrate cunning and determination, while learning to negotiate with supernatural beings who possessed knowledge he needed. The theft of their eye provided him with information about Medusa's location, while teaching him that heroic success often required morally ambiguous actions that served greater cosmic purposes. The actual confrontation with Medusa tested Perseus's ability to overcome primal fear while maintaining the tactical discipline necessary for survival against an opponent whose direct gaze meant instant death. His use of Athena's polished shield as a mirror allowed him to approach the sleeping Gorgon without meeting her fatal stare, while the curved sword provided by Hermes enabled him to decapitate her with a single stroke. The successful completion of this task demonstrated his worthiness for the heroic destiny that awaited him, while Medusa's death served cosmic purposes that extended far beyond Perseus's immediate concerns. The birth of Pegasus from Medusa's blood created new possibilities for future heroic adventures, while demonstrating how predetermined events generated consequences that enriched rather than constrained the cosmic tapestry. The winged horse would later serve Bellerophon in his battles against the Chimera and other monsters, while Perseus's retention of Medusa's head provided him with a weapon that would prove crucial in his subsequent adventures. These developments followed naturally from the initial quest's successful completion, while serving the broader cosmic purposes that governed heroic narrative progression. Theseus's career as Athens' greatest hero illustrated how individual heroic achievements served the development of civilized institutions and cultural advancement. His early adventures, including the slaying of various monsters and bandits who terrorized travelers along the roads to Athens, eliminated specific threats while establishing his reputation as a champion of justice and order. These preliminary accomplishments prepared him for his ultimate challenge in Crete, where his confrontation with the Minotaur would serve both personal heroic fulfillment and broader political purposes. The tribute of 7 young men and 7 maidens that Athens was forced to send to Crete every 9 years created the specific circumstances that brought Theseus into contact with his destined adversary. This tribute system, established after Athens' defeat in an earlier conflict, represented the type of oppressive arrangement that heroic intervention was designed to eliminate, according to cosmic patterns that favoured the development of just and equitable political systems. Theseus's voluntary participation in the tribute group demonstrated his willingness to risk personal destruction for the benefit of his community, a quality that marked him as worthy of heroic destiny. His navigation of the labyrinth constructed by Daedalus required assistance from Ariadne, whose love for the Athenian hero provided the emotional motivation for her betrayal of her own family and city. The thread she gave him to mark his path through the maze served as a literal manifestation of the cosmic threads that guided all heroic adventures, while her knowledge of the labyrinth's construction enabled Theseus to approach the Minotaur under optimal tactical conditions. The relationship between hero and helper demonstrated how predetermined destiny operated through authentic human emotions and relationships, rather than arbitrary divine decree. The Minotaur itself represented the type of unnatural horror that heroic intervention was specifically designed to eliminate from the world. This creature, born from Pasiphae's unnatural union with a bull, embodied the chaos and moral corruption that threatened civilized existence when proper boundaries between different categories of being were violated. Theseus's successful slaying of the monster restored natural order while demonstrating Athens' growing power and the heroic qualities of its future king. The 7 against Thebes represented the most comprehensive illustration of how familial curses operated across multiple generations through the predetermined patterns established by the 3 sisters. This conflict originated with the curse pronounced by Oedipus against his sons Eteocles and Polynices, whose disrespectful treatment of their father during his final years activated the destructive potential that had been woven into their family's destiny threads from the beginning. The curse ensured that the brothers would destroy each other in combat, but its fulfillment required a complex series of political and military developments that demonstrated the sophisticated mechanisms through which cosmic justice operated. Polynices' exile from Thebes following his dispute with Eteocles over royal succession created the initial conditions that would lead to the city's siege. His marriage to Argaea, daughter of King Adrastus of Argos, provided him with the political connections necessary for assembling a military coalition capable of challenging Theban power. The alliance that formed around Polynices' claim included some of Greece's most formidable warriors, each drawn to the expedition by personal motivations that served the cosmic purposes governing the curse's fulfillment. Amphiaraus the seer represented the most tragic figure among the seven, possessing prophetic knowledge of the expedition's doomed nature, while being compelled to participate by obligations that transcended his personal safety. His wife Euryphiles' acceptance of Polynices' bribe, the necklace of Harmonia that carried its own curse, created the circumstances that forced the reluctant prophet to join the doomed expedition. His participation demonstrated how even those who possessed divine knowledge remained subject to the predetermined patterns that governed cosmic justice, their prophetic abilities serving to illuminate rather than alter their destined fates. The siege itself unfolded through a series of single combats between champions from each side, creating opportunities for individual heroic display while advancing the narrative toward its predetermined conclusion. Each of these encounters eliminated specific warriors according to their destined times, while building toward the climactic confrontation between the two brothers whose mutual destruction would satisfy the curse's requirements. The cosmic orchestration of these events ensured that the maximum number of heroes would perish in the conflict, removing a generation of exceptional individuals whose continued existence might have disrupted the natural progression of Greek political development. The mutual slaying of Eteocles and Polynices at the seventh gate of Thebes fulfilled the specific terms of their father's curse, while demonstrating the precision with which cosmic justice operated through predetermined destiny. Both brothers approached this final combat knowing that it would likely prove fatal to both participants, yet neither could avoid the encounter, because their entire conflict had been constructed around competing claims to legitimacy that made peaceful resolution impossible. Their deaths satisfied the curse's requirements, while clearing the way for new forms of political organisation that would better serve long-term cosmic purposes. Jason and the Argonauts embarked upon their quest for the Golden Fleece under circumstances that appeared to offer unlimited divine support and favourable conditions for heroic success. The expedition included many of Greece's greatest heroes. Their ship Argo had been constructed with divine assistance and incorporated prophetic timbers from Dodona's sacred oak, while the quest itself served the political purposes of Jason's patron goddess Hera in her ongoing conflict with King Pelias of Iolcus. These advantages seemed to guarantee success, while demonstrating how cosmic forces supported heroic endeavours that served predetermined purposes. The specific challenges the Argonauts encountered during their journey to Colchis tested different aspects of heroic excellence, while advancing each participant toward his individual destiny. The passage through the simple gates required perfect timing and divine assistance to navigate the clashing rocks that had destroyed previous ships, while the encounter with the Harpies plaguing Phineus demonstrated how heroic intervention could eliminate supernatural threats that disrupted natural order. Each adventure served multiple purposes simultaneously, developing the heroes' capabilities, eliminating specific obstacles to their progress, and advancing the overall narrative toward its predetermined conclusion in Colchis. The trials imposed by King Aeetes as conditions for obtaining the Golden Fleece created circumstances that required both heroic prowess and supernatural assistance to complete successfully. Jason's yoking of the fire-breathing bulls and his sowing of dragon's teeth that sprouted into armed warriors demonstrated his worthiness for heroic achievement while serving Medea's purposes in establishing her relationship with the expedition's leader. Her magical assistance enabled Jason to complete tasks that would have been impossible through purely mortal capabilities, yet this divine aid operated within the framework of predetermined destiny rather than circumventing cosmic law. The actual theft of the Golden Fleece required Medea's direct intervention to overcome the sleepless dragon that guarded the sacred grove. Her use of magical herbs to induce slumber in the monster enabled Jason to complete his quest while binding her fate to his through the assistance she provided. This collaboration between hero and sorceress demonstrated how predetermined destiny operated through authentic relationships and mutual dependence rather than individual achievement, ensuring that both participants would face consequences that served broader cosmic purposes. The return journey revealed how even successful heroic quests remained subject to cosmic forces that could transform apparent victory into sources of future tragedy. The pursuit by Aeetes and his forces created circumstances that led to Absyrtus's murder, an act that violated fundamental laws of hospitality and kinship, while demonstrating how heroic expeditions could generate moral debt that would require future payment. The various delays and obstacles the Argonauts encountered during their homeward voyage served to develop the psychological and spiritual consequences of their actions, while ensuring that their return to Greece would occur according to predetermined timing. Jason's eventual abandonment of Medea in favour of marriage to Glaus of Corinth activated the destructive potential that had been building throughout their relationship, transforming the sorceress from heroic helper into agent of cosmic vengeance. Her murder of their children and her rival represented the fulfillment of patterns that had been established through Jason's earlier actions, demonstrating how heroic success could generate consequences that ultimately destroyed the heroes who achieved it. The cosmic justice that operated through these events served purposes that transcended individual happiness or success, maintaining universal order through the systematic correction of moral imbalances. The heroic narratives that revealed cosmic justice operating through individual destinies ultimately served to illuminate a far more fundamental truth about the Moirai's role in universal governance. These dramatic tales of gods and heroes, while captivating in their scope and emotional intensity, represented merely the most visible manifestations of a cosmic order that operated through every aspect of existence, from the most mundane daily activities to the grand movements of celestial bodies. The Three Sisters' authority extended beyond the realm of mythological narrative to encompass the basic structure of reality itself, establishing the fundamental principles that governed not merely individual destinies, but the essential nature of existence across all levels of being. Modern interpretations that characterize the Moirai as personifications of past, present and future reflected a misunderstanding of their cosmic function that reduced their sophisticated role to simple temporal categories. This temporal interpretation, while superficially appealing in its apparent logic, failed to capture the profound philosophical and spiritual insights that ancient Greek thought embedded within the sisters' traditional roles. The authentic understanding that emerged from centuries of religious practice and philosophical reflection recognized the three figures as embodiments of life's essential stages rather than abstract time periods. The functions corresponding to the fundamental processes that defined conscious existence, rather than mere chronological divisions. Clotho's role as the spinner represented far more than the simple beginning of temporal existence. Her function encompassed the cosmic principle of potentiality becoming actuality, the mysterious process through which abstract possibility transformed into concrete reality. Every moment of conscious experience involved this fundamental transition from potential to actual, as infinite possibilities collapsed into specific events, thoughts, and actions that shaped individual existence. Clotho's spinning created the basic framework within which all subsequent development could occur, establishing not merely the fact of existence, but the essential parameters that would govern how that existence unfolded through time. The thread she spun contained within their structure the complete blueprint of each individual's capacity for growth, learning, and spiritual development. These cosmic strands encoded not predetermined events in simple chronological sequence, but rather the fundamental patterns that would guide how each consciousness responded to the challenges and opportunities that characterized mortal existence. The thickness, texture, and composition of individual threads reflected the spiritual resources available to each soul, the types of experiences that would prove most beneficial for their development, and the ultimate purposes that their lives would serve within the broader cosmic design. Her spindle operated according to principles that transcended simple mechanical function, serving as an instrument through which cosmic consciousness manifested individual awareness within the constraints of physical existence. The device itself existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions of reality, its operation affecting not merely the material circumstances of birth, but the spiritual conditions that determined how consciousness would develop within those circumstances. The spinning process created connections between individual awareness and universal consciousness that would persist throughout the entire duration of physical existence, ensuring that personal development remained aligned with cosmic purposes, even when individual choices seemed to diverge from predetermined patterns. The moment of birth represented the culmination of Clotho's work, the instant when potential consciousness achieved independent existence within the material realm. This transition required precise coordination of countless factors that extended far beyond simple biological processes to encompass the spiritual, psychological, and cosmic conditions necessary for successful incarnation. The timing of each birth reflected careful calculation of astronomical influences, social circumstances, family dynamics, and the broader historical context within which the new consciousness would develop its individual identity and pursue its destined purposes. Lachesis assumed responsibility for the vast middle portion of existence, where conscious beings encountered the experiences that shaped their development according to predetermined patterns. Her domain encompassed not merely the duration of individual lives, but the quality and intensity of experiences that filled those years, the relationships that provided contexts for growth and learning, and the challenges that tested and developed each consciousness according to its specific needs and capabilities. Her measuring rod assessed multiple dimensions of existence simultaneously, determining not only how long each life would last, but how deeply it would engage with the fundamental questions that defined conscious existence. The allocation of experiences under Lachesis' authority operated according to sophisticated principles that balanced individual developmental needs with the requirements of cosmic order. Each consciousness required specific types of challenges to develop its inherent potential, yet these individual needs had to be coordinated with the developmental requirements of other souls and the broader patterns that governed social, cultural, and historical development. A soul destined for leadership might require early experiences of responsibility and decision-making, while one meant for spiritual teaching could benefit from periods of solitude and contemplation that would seem like deprivation to personalities suited for more active roles. Her measurement of life's experiences extended beyond simple quantitative assessment to encompass qualitative evaluation of how effectively each encounter served its intended developmental purpose. A brief moment of profound insight might contribute more to an individual's spiritual growth than years of routine activity, while a single act of courage or compassion could transform not only the actor, but everyone affected by their choice. Lachesis understood these subtle relationships between experience and development, ensuring that each consciousness encountered precisely the combination of circumstances necessary for optimal growth within the time available for their earthly existence. The relationships between different individuals fell under Lachesis' particular expertise, as she coordinated the intersections between multiple destiny threads to create the social contexts within which personal development occurred. Marriages, friendships, professional associations, and even casual encounters were orchestrated to serve the developmental needs of all participants, while advancing the broader cosmic purposes that required specific types of collaboration and conflict. A chance meeting between strangers might provide one with crucial information, while offering the other an opportunity to practice generosity, both interactions serving predetermined purposes that neither participant consciously recognized. The distribution of fortune and misfortune under her authority reflected deep understanding of how different types of experiences contributed to spiritual development and cosmic purposes. Material wealth could provide opportunities for generosity and social responsibility, yet it might also create obstacles to spiritual growth if it encouraged attachment to temporary pleasures rather than eternal values. Poverty could foster spiritual development through detachment from material concerns, but it might also prevent individuals from developing their full potential if basic needs remained unmet. Lachesis calibrated these distributions to serve each consciousness's specific developmental requirements while maintaining the social diversity necessary for complex civilizations. Educational opportunities, whether formal or experiential, were allocated according to each individual's capacity for learning and their destined role in advancing human knowledge and understanding. Some consciousnesses required extensive formal education to develop their intellectual capabilities, while others learned more effectively through direct experience and practical application. The timing of educational encounters reflected careful coordination with individual developmental readiness and the availability of teachers who possessed the knowledge and wisdom necessary for effective instruction. Atropos embodied the cosmic principle of completion and transformation, her function encompassing far more than simple termination of physical existence. Her role involved ensuring that each consciousness achieved the maximum possible development within the time allocated for earthly existence, while facilitating the transition to whatever form of continued existence awaited them according to their spiritual attainment and cosmic destiny. Her shears cut not merely the physical connections that bound souls to material bodies, but the psychological attachments that might impede their progress toward higher forms of consciousness. The timing of death under Atropos' authority reflected sophisticated understanding of when each consciousness had completed the developmental work that earthly existence could provide. Some souls required long lives to accomplish their cosmic purposes, while others achieved their intended growth more rapidly and could benefit from transition to different forms of existence. The manner of death, whether peaceful or violent, sudden or gradual, alone or surrounded by loved ones, was chosen to serve both the departing consciousness's needs and the developmental requirements of those who would be affected by their passing. Her scissors possessed the capability to sever connections at multiple levels of existence simultaneously, ensuring that the transition from physical to spiritual existence occurred completely and irreversibly. The cutting process involved not merely the cessation of biological function, but the systematic disconnection of consciousness from all the attachments and identifications that had defined its earthly existence. This liberation could be experienced as loss and grief by those who remained attached to the deceased's physical presence, yet it represented necessary freedom for the consciousness to continue its development in forms that transcended material limitations. The moment of death itself required precise timing that coordinated the departing consciousness's readiness for transition with the cosmic conditions that would facilitate their movement to appropriate spiritual destinations. Atropos had to ensure that each soul departed when astronomical influences, spiritual preparations, and earthly circumstances combined to create optimal conditions for successful transition. The coordination of these multiple factors demonstrated the sophisticated nature of cosmic administration and the careful attention that the three sisters devoted to every aspect of conscious existence. The philosophical implications of this life-stage interpretation of the Moirai's functions revolutionized ancient Greek understanding of personal responsibility, moral accountability, and the relationship between individual choice and cosmic order. If the three sisters governed the fundamental processes of existence, rather than merely predetermined specific events, then mortal consciousness possessed genuine agency in determining how those processes would manifest in particular circumstances. Individuals could not alter the basic framework of their existence, the fact of birth, the necessity of encountering challenges and opportunities, and the inevitability of death, but they retained meaningful choice in how they responded to these universal conditions. This understanding resolved the apparent contradiction between predetermined destiny and moral responsibility that had puzzled ancient philosophers and theologians. The Moirai established the contexts within which moral choices occurred rather than determining the specific content of those choices. A consciousness born into circumstances that provided opportunities for leadership could choose to exercise that potential through just and beneficial governance or through tyrannical oppression, both choices occurring within the predetermined framework while carrying vastly different moral and spiritual consequences. The concept of cosmic justice operated through this system of contextual predetermination and individual choice, ensuring that each consciousness encountered circumstances appropriate to their developmental needs while maintaining the freedom necessary for authentic moral growth. Those who used their opportunities wisely and compassionately created conditions that supported their continued spiritual advancement, while those who chose selfishness or cruelty generated obstacles that would require correction in future circumstances. The justice involved in this system transcended simple reward and punishment to encompass the sophisticated educational process through which consciousness developed toward its ultimate potential. The relationship between individual development and cosmic purposes revealed a profound interconnectedness that characterized all existence within the universal order maintained by the three sisters. Personal spiritual growth served not merely individual fulfillment, but contributed to the collective advancement of consciousness throughout the universe. Each individual's choices and development affected not only their own future circumstances, but influenced the opportunities and challenges that would be available to other consciousnesses in their sphere of influence. This interconnectedness extended across temporal boundaries as well as spatial relationships, with choices made by earlier generations affecting the circumstances encountered by their descendants, while decisions made in the present created conditions that would influence future developments. The Moirai's weaving created patterns that encompass these complex temporal relationships, ensuring that the consequences of individual choices served the long-term development of consciousness, while respecting the immediate needs of each generation. The enduring power of the Moirai's symbolism transcended the specific cultural and religious contexts within which their mythology originally developed, speaking to universal truths about the nature of conscious existence that remained relevant across different historical periods and cultural traditions. Their representation of life's fundamental stages, the mystery of beginning, the complexity of development, and the necessity of completion provided a framework for understanding human experience that could be adapted to various philosophical and spiritual perspectives while maintaining its essential insights. The image of the cosmic loom operated by three sisters captured fundamental truths about the relationship between individual existence and universal order that spoke to human consciousness across cultural boundaries. The metaphor of threads being spun, measured and cut provided an accessible way of understanding how personal destiny related to cosmic purposes, while the sisters' cooperation demonstrated the unity underlying apparent diversity in cosmic administration. Their eternal nature suggested that the principles they embodied transcended temporal limitations, operating as permanent features of reality rather than temporary arrangements subject to change. Modern psychology and philosophy have found in the Moirai's symbolism insights that remain relevant for understanding human development and the relationship between individual agency and environmental constraints. The recognition that personal growth occurs within contexts that provide both opportunities and limitations reflects the ancient wisdom embedded in their traditional roles, while their representation of life stages offers frameworks for understanding psychological development that complement contemporary scientific knowledge with spiritual and philosophical depth. The three sisters ultimately represented the fundamental truth that conscious existence operates according to principles that transcend individual preference while respecting the dignity and potential of each individual consciousness. Their cosmic authority ensured that the universe operated according to reliable laws rather than descending into chaos, while their wisdom guaranteed that those laws serve purposes worthy of the consciousness that they governed. The threads they wove created a tapestry of existence that was both beautiful in its overall design and meaningful in its smallest details, demonstrating that individual lives possess significance that extended far beyond their immediate circumstances to encompass their contributions to the eternal cosmic order. In their eternal vigil at the cosmic loom, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos continued their ancient work of weaving the threads that bound all existence together in patterns of profound meaning and purpose. Their authority transcended the mythological narratives that had made them famous, extending to the fundamental principles that governed reality itself. They remained the ultimate arbiters of existence, their decisions shaping not merely individual destinies but the basic structure of consciousness and its relationship to the cosmos. Through their eternal weaving, they ensured that existence itself remained a coherent and meaningful process, rather than a random collection of unconnected events, their cosmic authority serving as the foundation upon which all other truths depended.